K-N-U-S? Actually, that sounds pretty good. K-N-U-S is actually the letters, but I'm going to now try to copyright K-N-U-S. I think that's the feeling you have when you listen to K-N-U-S. It's K-N-U-S. Hey, listen, lots going on in the news today. We're going to cover it. It was a day of resignations for a couple different people on stories that we had been covering. But before I get into that, there's the, of course, 6 o'clock stuff we have to do. For those of you that are like, oh my God, are you talking about the Thorpe Report or you choose the news? The answer is no. No. Billy is still on, I don't know if it's some sort of house arrest or how he describes it in the Thorpe household, but he's not in until next Monday. We have Geronimo with us. And, G is someone that we reference in just about every show anymore to talk about. And Geronimo, you're part of this. I'm not saying we're doing this behind your back, even though you have no idea we're doing it. For our friends at Advanced Hair, when we talk about all the options men have, one of them is to do the full G, the full Geronimo. So welcome aboard. It's nice to have you running the boards. Hopefully we won't make this thing too painful for you. Now, here's what we've got, folks. Again, brand new stuff from the weather people. Never seen it before, because I think when they break out that weather Ouija board, they have no dang idea who's going to put pressure on the R versus the S. They don't know who's going to guide the little thing around to tell them that today, high of 50 degrees, but there's snowflakes on the pictogram. 50 degrees with overnight snow. Tomorrow, morning snow. If you've got the chance to put the car into the garage, and that's a struggle for me, tonight's the night to do it. Then 49 degrees, burning ball of fire on Saturday. Sunny is what they say. And then get this, they've now adjusted their temperatures up. We were going to be hovering around that 50, 49 mark for a while. Sunday, 58 degrees. Monday, 59 degrees. And Tuesday and Wednesday, 60 and 62. You and I both know that by the time we sign off tomorrow, the weather people will have adjusted that for a hurricane following Tuesday, and then Wednesday, of course, will be some sort of a blizzard with lightning, even though I don't think that can actually happen at the same time. That's what they'll prognosticate. So good weather ahead of us. This weekend is a good weekend to break out the kilt if it's been hiding somewhere in your house during those winter months. It's still winter. It's just going to feel a little bit more like spring. As you know, we also like to do a little on this day history trivia stuff here that goes on, and we get help now from one of our texter listeners, and he usually finds some of the good stuff right now. Although I would say, Aaron, Brazil, I don't know, not that excited by that. Here's one. On this day in history, 1533, Henry VIII married. Now listen, Geronimo, I know you have access to the sound there. Can you chime in on this, because I'd like to quiz you?
All right.
Hold on here. I got to get back to it. It is Henry VIII. You know, he had a whole bunch of wives.
Yes.
On this day in 1533, he married Anne Boleyn in a secret ceremony. Which wife number was that?
I'm going to guess it was late. It was number 7.
I love the fact that you're willing to jump in on this. That, of course, is absolutely wrong. But it is his second. His second wife was Anne Boleyn. And, of course, none of them really fared all that well. In 1949, on this day, the very first Emmy Awards were presented. There were only 6 categories. I think they have 100 now or something like that. Nominated shows were limited to those that aired in Los Angeles. In typical California fashion, we are the center of the universe. 1961, an animated film, Disney classic. I'm going to give you one other hint, Geronimo. It is the villain in the show was it was Cruella de Vil.
Oh, that's
name the movie.
101 Dalmatians.
Dang, you nailed that, man. Yeah. You nailed that. Do you have kids that you know of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Buddy, the fact that you can know 101 Dalmatians tells me that played a major role in your life or something else. I mean, if it was kids, like when you start talking about Dr. Seuss, yeah, you remember it from being a kid. You really remember it from reading Green Eggs and Ham for the 100th time, or some sort of one fish, two fish. So the fact that you know 101 Dalmatians based off of Cruella de Vil says a lot about you. That's a good thing. 1971, I was Geronimo. I'm not even sure you were on the planet yet. Charles Manson, convicted of a series of murders that were in a book called Helter Skelter, which also became a movie. If you have not read Helter Skelter, I'm telling you, you should get this. It is written by the prosecutor who prosecuted the case, a legend, a man named Vincent Bugliosi. Vincent Bugliosi, who has recently passed. This dude was a prosecutor's prosecutor. This thing absorbed him. But this book is fantastic. He'd written a couple others after this. I had the honor of being able to teach a bunch of Marine Corps prosecutors out at Camp Pendleton. I don't know. It could have been 2013. God, I can't believe it's that long ago, but I think it was, I don't know why I know this. I think it was during Super Bowl week for when we got smoked by the Seahawks. Do you remember that? Where like the first play was we snapped the ball through the back of the end zone because let's start strong. I had a chance to go teach down for the Marine Corps. The young captain that invited me to do this said, "Hey, sir, you're going to want to come early to this thing because Vincent Bugliosi is going to be there." And of course I did. I rearranged my schedule. I got there early. Normally I show up, I don't know, half an hour before I'm supposed to present and all this. This guy was fascinating as a prosecutor and very old school. This is 2013. So we had electricity and stuff like that. This guy had nothing but legal pads. Not a single bit of technology. I'm a PowerPoint guy. I mean, if you watch the YouTubeable opening statement from Aurora Theater, you can see I use PowerPoint, and I think I do an okay job with it. In fact, so much so that I teach it every year at DU, including right now in this semester. I'll teach it this Friday after the radio. So here I am. I show up. I'm the younger buck with all the technology and stuff, and I'm anxious to hear Vincent Bugliosi, and he just has all of these yellow legal pads. I don't know how fresh they are. I don't know if these are ongoing notes that he keeps on different subjects, but he just kept going back to these different yellow pads talking about trial work. And I sat there, and by the end of this, and I never feel this way. Folks, I have a great deal of hubris when it comes to things like prosecution, the law, presentation. I realize I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but when it comes to telling a story, I feel like I can hold my own. I'm never, ever nervous after going after somebody else. In fact, on the contrary, I like to go after other people so that they can set the bar medium or low. This guy, when he got done talking, I was like, I don't want to go anymore. Like I have a tummy ache. I want to go somewhere else because this dude just oozed credibility. And I couldn't tell if these young captains, mostly captains in the Marine Corps, could appreciate the things he was saying because they're at their place in their career where they don't know yet, right? Like you haven't been in court enough to really understand, appreciate some of the tips this guy was given. And, I'd already been through Columbine. I'd already been through whatever my role in Kobe Bryant was going to be. I'd already been through a bunch of other big crimes. Hell, I'd already inherited Aurora Theater, although we wouldn't try it for a couple of years. And I sat there listening to this guy thinking, dang, this guy has lived it. Well, this book, Helter Skelter, afterwards, I said, and by the way, it was nice. I got a picture with Vincent Bugliosi and the young captain that put us together. He gave me an autographed copy of his book, of his new book that he had. And it was something about the sea, something or other. I haven't read it yet. In fact, I just had found it. I was going through a box the other day, found it. And this guy has this book, Helter Skelter. Folks, it survives the test of time. All right. So what I did was, because I can't read for leisure anymore, I'm reading for the job, for this. I'm reading for other things. I'm reading for the law. I don't have the ability and frankly, the will to read for leisure. So this book is also on Audible. That's the way I do most of my regular reading consumption. And it's worth it. I'm telling you, go out there and get Helter Skelter. This is a book that's worth it when you look at the crime and how it unfolded. And remember, Charles Manson never pulls a trigger, never plunges a knife. That's not at all what happens with Helter Skelter, but he is the mastermind and the leader behind this. Now, there's a movie out there that was a Quentin Tarantino movie. I think it was Quentin Tarantino's 9th movie, called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. Also, by the way, a great movie. Quentin Tarantino does nice work, but it's very revisionist in its history, and it has this particular event in it. The murder, I think it was leading up to this, was LaBianca Tate murders, is how they describe this. And there was, what's her name? Something Tate, the very attractive young lady who lived with Roman Polanski. Was it Roman Polanski? Gosh dang it. I'm going to remember this. But they do some revisionist history on the story. It is fascinating. So this was a huge diversion off of the fact that on this day in 1971, a jury convicted Charles Manson in a prosecution by a real, honest-to-God prosecutor named Vincent Bugliosi. Those are some big ones from the day, man. That's a good one. That same day, somewhere else on the planet, there was a coup in Uganda under someone named Idi Amin. If you're below a certain age, you don't know who the heck Idi Amin is. If you're above that line, that age demarcation, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Vicious, brutal leader out there in Africa took over Uganda on this day in 1971. And then and this is going to speak to Geronimo because, by the way, Geronimo Arpaio, is that Dutch Irish? What is that?
Italian.
Yeah, I thought so. So on this day in 1817, this will speak to you because in our American stereotypical sort of ethnocentric thing, we feel like anybody that has heritage with a certain country understands, appreciates, and frankly knows all of the things that are important to that country. So in 1817, Gioacchino Rossini's opera La Cenerentola, which is actually Cinderella, premiered in Rome. So congratulations, G. I know you take a great deal of pride in that.
Yeah.
And the very first Winter Olympics on this day in 1924 opened in France. I would try to pronounce the city, but it has an X in it. And because I skipped that day in the French class I never took in high school, I have no idea how to say that. Folks, by the way, we're up on the YouTubes. I don't know if Mark knows that because I was woefully behind in clicking on that link. It was Sharon Tate. Thank you, texter Sharon Tate, for the Tate LaBianca murders. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is our friend Alexa. I remember reading Helter Skelter. Charles Manson was a very scary guy. He was, but this dude, where else do we see throughout history these people pop up that we cannot explain why people follow them? I mean, this guy had no real skill set, and yet these people looked at him and believed in him as if he was Jesus. I mean, it was crazy. Thank you on the Sharon Tate. Let's see. I will. This was from yesterday. Man, how are we getting texts that are just popping up today from yesterday? And then someone else hitting us with an update. And you're right, texter. Mike Lynch, who was the minority leader up until the close of business yesterday, resigned his position. We'll talk a little bit about that. This is interesting. And then there was another resignation that we'll talk about as well, and that is the Arizona State GOP chair, 10 months after being recorded by Kari Lake, audio releases, and she calls for his resignation, saying he's corrupt. I don't know how you could ever survive something on that recording, but he's gone. He also put out a statement. We'll cover all that stuff as we continue to move through the morning as well. I'm going to do this to you, though, folks, to start us off, to get us a little warmed up. And I never do this because the 6 o'clock hour is usually banter time, followed by the Thorpe Report, and you choose the news. Now, Geronimo's up on the news, no doubt about it, but he does not subject himself as Billy does to the earlier morning hours where he's going through, just clawing through all the information out there to cull together some, and you'll admit this, there are some things in the You Choose the News segment you don't even believe are real. They're from the dark web somewhere. And I don't think Geronimo has the password to that part of the dark web, but Billy does because he's actually the gatekeeper. So what I want to do in this hour, though, is remind you that tonight, there's a lot of stuff going on today in terms of the news, some things I have to do recording wise, but at the end of the day, I get to go up to the Fort Lumpton Rec Center. Now, you may think, I want to go see this thing. I want to go participate. It's too late. It's a Women of Weld event. And if you know anything about the Women of Weld, once they launch an event, it sells out pretty quickly. It sells out so quickly that I talked to some candidates who are supposed to be part of this, and they got in too late to get their staffers there. And if you know anything about the game of politics, when you travel out to these forums and lunches and breakfasts and stuff, you always like to have at least one, but sometimes more than that people. It helps you with the coordination, some of the organization, getting things out, getting, information out. Maybe you're getting signatures. It kind of doesn't matter what it is. You love to have more than just you, the candidate. That's never been true for me. I mean, it's rarely been true. Maybe when I ran for AG, I had someone. I've always just been that guy. But these campaigns for Congress that we're going to talk about up at the Women of Weld event at the Fort Lupton Rec Center, these are congressional races. And so most of these folks have the means and the support to provide more than one staff member. And I talked with one yesterday who said, hey, we just got in too late. I had to beg to get one person in. I can't bring this person and that person. Some people have cameras, photographers and stuff that travel with them to take pictures. No such joy for some of these folks because it's sold out. But what's going to happen is about 5:30, and I think there's a dinner up there too. I'm kind of counting on it just based on my need for calories. At 5:30, they're going to have a dinner. The candidates will all go back. We'll talk about some rules. And then starting at around 6-ish, o'clock-ish, two superstars in the media, one Kelly Maher, a conservative who you really only ever see as the token on 9 News when they talk politics, but she's fantastic, and Jesse Paul, who's an investigative reporter for the Colorado Sun. They will conduct a forum, a structured forum based on time and certain questions of the candidates for CD8. That's the current seat being held by Dr. Caraveo. If you'll recall, 2 years ago, Barb Kirkmeyer woulda, coulda, shoulda won that race, but she didn't because a libertarian candidate jumped in and scooped up the arguably conservative votes that would have gone to Barb, and she ended up losing by a very narrow margin. So, in my opinion, if the Republicans can do the things that Republicans can do in that district, and we don't have another libertarian candidate step up to say, I want to sink our battleship in the name of principle. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want the Democrat to be in power over principle. If we don't have that, then Caraveo is going to be a one and done congresswoman. And that would be great for America, great for Colorado for a lot of reasons, mostly because we want to fill that D spot with an R. That being the case, the people at this forum with this Jesse Kelly monitored, or that's the right word, forum moderated, they're going to be helping you to pick who that next representative of Congress is. That's a big deal. After that one ends, and it'll be shorter because I think there's only 3, maybe 4 candidates, then they'll take a small break. People will get their drink on, I presume, and then we'll show up for the circus. And the circus is going to be 10 candidates for CD4. That's the seat being vacated by Ken Buck. And those 10 candidates, I could probably find all 10 of their names if I needed to and read them to you, but they include names that you've heard before because these folks have been on the show before. People like Lauren Boebert, like Jerry Sonnenberg, like the aforementioned Mike Lynch, like, someone named Deb Flora. I don't know if you've ever heard of her on 710. She's in that race. And here's now that I've gone down the road and listed 4, somebody's going to want to punch me in the face because they're like, you didn't say. It's just because I'm just going through the names that are right in the front of my mind. Please forgive me. But there's 10 people running for this thing. Oh, Peter Yu, I think, is part of this group. I know I'm going to be leaving. So, Richard Holtorf, who is also in studio. Stefan hooked us up with him. So you can see this one. These are all characters, folks. And I don't mean that in a funny way. I mean characters like they have personalities, they have confidence, they have great accomplishments. And we've got to figure out a way to conduct this forum in a certain amount of time in a way that reveals information that could be decisive for voters about how to cast their vote for the upcoming primary that'll be in June. Now, there'll be an assembly before that. And usually the assembly, this is my opinion on the assemblies, they should always take place within the jurisdiction that the office is. And that includes whether it's, representative, Senate, DA, Congress, doesn't matter. Well, what happens a lot is these jurisdictions co-locate these assemblies with the state assembly, which is now all the way down in Pueblo. And so to participate in the CD8 nominating process, you'd have to get in your, or 4, you might have to get in your car and drive down to Pueblo to be part of this. Not sure yet. I don't know where those are going to be, but just a thought. So here's where I need your help. There's a long setup to ask for your help. What the hell do I ask these people? I mean, what are the questions that you would want to ask a would-be congressional candidate running for a Republican nomination? Because the reality is these people, 2 of these people in these 2 forums tonight, hosted by the Women of Weld, are going to be members of Congress this time next year. That's a big deal. Given everything we have to deal with, that's a big deal. And so I'd love to know what your thoughts are on what questions to ask these people. I mean, I can think of some, but I got to know, and I'm running out of time. Someone texted in, I live in CD8. I bet you those libertarian voters were Republicans who did not like Barb Kirkmeyer. So stupid. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. I really have never understood the idea of an 80%, what I view to be, and this isn't me, I'm a Barb Kirkmeyer fan. If that person's an 80% candidate for me, like I agree with 80% of them, I'd rather see them lose. I'd rather vote for someone else so that the person I'm opposed to 80% of the time gets the spot. I agree with you, Texture. That's the kind of thing that's going on in politics right now. What questions? You can call in at 303-696-1971. We can have this conversation. Or you can text in. What questions do you want to ask of these candidates who want to go to Congress? And as you know, many of these congressional seats then become filled with people who start to eye the next seat over. Is it governor? Is it Senate? Is it some cabinet position? So this is no small deal. 435 members of the House of Representatives at the U.S. level, apportioned according to population by Article 1 of the Constitution. And here we are, we're in the thick of it. And this guy that you're listening to right here somehow falls his way into a position to ask questions of these people that we're going to be talking about over the next few years. Did they solve the border crisis? What are they doing about the investigations related to either the current president or his son, or maybe the next president? What are these folks doing about fentanyl? What are these folks doing about crime, if they can do anything at the national level? What about the economy? How about Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan? I mean, these are people that are going to be casting votes that could change the direction of the country. Now, admittedly, that really hasn't happened much lately. I mean, when people were like, well, why wouldn't you want to throw your hat in the ring for CD4? I'm like, 1, there's no more room in the ring. It's just filled. It's filled with people. But 2, I don't want to leave. Still got 2 boys under the roof. I'm not anxious to leave them until they're out of the house. And then 3, I've asked people this. I did it yesterday. What's the last best thing the Congress did? And it's a struggle, man. You'll get people think about, some folks on the right will say, well, we got rid of that Kevin McCarthy. And I'm like, yeah, okay, Kevin, got it. Now what? What else have we done? What have we done for America? And nobody has a good answer. So maybe these are the folks that are going to do it. But I need your help to try to vet them. Oh, of course, I get some of the list. Every candidate, this is a friend from the Women of Weld. Every candidate had one staffer ticket, no matter when they got in. There will be a live stream. Oh, this is cool. Live stream on Facebook, Women of Weld. The doors open at 5 p.m. It starts at 6 p.m. sharp. Is there a dinner, Texter? Because otherwise, I got to pick something up on the way, but I'm really anxious for you guys to provide some food if you can. Just kidding. Here's some of the names I left out. Of course, Ted Harvey, State Senator Ted Harvey from Douglas County. Trent Lisi, Justin Schreiber, who called into the show and suggested because I hired someone years ago who's now prosecuting him, maybe I'm disqualified from being a moderator. Peter Yu, Richard Holtorf, the others. I mean, it's jam-packed. There was one woman who I think was going to be on the stage, and she dropped out or something like that. And I don't know her name, and my guess is you'll never have heard it either, because when I read it, I was like, I didn't know who that was at the time. I don't think she's in this thing anymore. And now that I've said it the way I have, if she shows up, I'm going to be awfully embarrassed. A lot of egg on my face over that. So You text us. You can do it off of the app. You can email us, although that's less available to me for a lot of the ways I have things set up here, a lot of reasons. But you can text us in and get us some of your thoughts on what questions to ask them. I'd love to explore that with you. I don't think I'm the smartest guy in the room. I am anxious, though, to try to do a good job for these people who are likely to get, outside of lightning round questions, maybe 6 substantive questions. Because if you think about it, 10 people, if you give 10 people a minute or 2 minutes to answer each question, that's 10 or 20 minutes gone out of an hour, hour and a half at most. And I don't think we can go that long, but maybe it's an hour and a half moderated event. Well, that's just not that much, right? That's just not that much. So are there more than 6 issues? What are they? 303-696-1971. Here's a texter that says, I want to promise that whomever goes to Congress will not act like a high schooler out of Mean Girls. That feels like a lightning round question. And folks, there will be a lightning round. Those are the ones where you say, hey, show of hands or yes or no, that kind of thing. I love those. Even though I know that there's explanation for this, I love those as a vehicle to get other conversations, right? So for instance, if you were to ask a question like yes or no, or by a show of hands, who would support a federal abortion ban? Now, I don't even know if that's a question we're going to ask. I'm not making those decisions in a vacuum. I get to do this thing with the great Ernest Lunning, who's a fantastic reporter, longtime political reporter. So I don't get to make those decisions in a vacuum, but that's a pretty obvious one, right? Like who here would support it? Because they might actually vote on it. I love those because people always want to answer an addition. Well, it would depend on that. No, just who would support the federal abortion ban? And then you can use whatever time you give them afterwards to extrapolate on that. So I'm interested in you. What are the topics that should be covered for Congress? What do you expect out of your congressperson? And it could be CD8, it could be CD4. If you had specific individual questions for people, like, I want to ask Mike Lynch about that thing you talked about on the radio, that's okay. But, the forum, especially with this many people, not set up for a lot of that. There could be a little of that, but not much of that. Especially when you're trying to get people nailed down on policy so that people can understand the differences. Honestly, the lamestream media will be good for highlighting all of those other differences between them in terms of records, both criminal and professional, and other things like that. But I'm happy to explore those. But text in your questions. We'll do this throughout the show. What questions do you want asked of the people vying to be representatives from CD8 and CD4? You can do that off of the app for sure. You can text us there, or you can call us, you can email us, you can do the whole thing. Now, here's what I want to do. I don't want to just go right into another topic because we have some sound, we have some things set up. We covered a couple stories yesterday. There have been some developments on them. I'd like to go through them with you and get some of your feedback, but I need you to stick around. And to do that, you just keep the radio. If you're listening on the radio, impressive. Keep the radio tuned. Otherwise, keep that phone on. You're talking to George Brauchler right here on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, Little Smashing Pumpkins on the George Show. I had asked the question, what should these congressional candidates be asked tonight? And you can call in at 303-696-1971. I'd love to have that discussion. Also send the text, and we'll start with our callers. Frank, you're on 710. Frank, what do you think?
I've got the perfect answer for you.
Answer? How about the perfect question?
It's going to be the perfect question.
Okay,
but
here we go.
The question is also the answer.
I get it.
But first, I have no doubt that you are the perfect host for this thing. All you got to do is limit them each to one rabbit trail to go down. But the answer to your question is going to be a double bonus for you. The question is based on a book. Are you familiar with an author named Napoleon Hill?
Oh, that name sounds so familiar, but I've read nothing from
Think and
Napoleon.
Grow Rich.
Mm.
An old book. It's an old financial and success book written back in the 30s or 40s. But he was a super author that Andrew Carnegie commissioned him to interview about 500 titans of the time to what was their success. And he wrote this book. It's been a number one bestseller for many, many years.
Yeah.
It needs more than one reading. It's also available on audio for you. But he wrote another book at that time, and this is the answer to your question.
Oh, okay.
It's called Outwitting the Devil. And so it would be turned in your case into a question, how do you plan to outwit the devil? In other words, the Democrats. What are your plans to outwit him in the coming term? And this book is fascinating because it was put on hold for 30 years because the topic was so touchy that back at that time they didn't even want to let it out, but it got put out, and it's now in book form, and it's also an audio tape by Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil, and it has some interesting questions to be posed, especially for a prosecutor such as you.
That sounds great. What answers are you looking for? Like, if you're sitting up there, Frank, and you get asked that question, what are the kinds of things you're looking for these candidates to tell you?
Well, the super alert and smart ones are already listening to this program this morning, so maybe they'll get the book and try to listen to it. But you got to ask them, what are their tactics going to be for opposing these people who are making a living out of it? They think at night and day it's their religion. And the Republican conservative group has other things going on. And so this guy, his techniques and tactics in this book are fascinating to me because I'd not heard them before. And I think you'll find them the same. But people have to think proactively, like Stephen Covey says in his book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, to be proactive. And if we don't start doing that as conservatives, we're not going to see many wins. And we need to start winning as one of the candidates.
Frank, I think that's a great question. Like, how are we going to get in the end zone? Is there room in that analysis for compromise? And I say that because it's become a bit of a dirty word, especially with folks from a certain part of our party. It's like, no compromise, principle. And it's like, yeah, there are principles, but some of these things are not principles. They're policy. And is there any room for compromise?
I think Congress was created for compromise, and ideally that would be the best way. However, when you have one side that has abandoned compromise and gone full tilt warfare against their opponents, to the words like Obama spoke, our enemies, things like that, it's sad. But you have to put up a good offense, and that's what we need to do. We've been constantly playing defense, and we need to do offense. And if you do offense to the right way, then it doesn't lead. It puts them on the defensive, and they're on their back heel, and that's a good place to keep them because they already desperate and trying crazy things. But you have to point out the contrast.
Well, Frank, I think that's good. I think that might be one of those good early questions we consider asking. I think the obvious ones too would start with something like that. Like, what's your approach to how you're going to do this job? How are you going to get into the end zone for
they say the
devil's
in the details. So you could allow them to expand on that question. How do you plan to outwit this devil and what details do you plan to use to do that?
Yeah, Frank, thank you for that, man. I appreciate that. Good to hear from you. Frank's line is open 303-696-1971. I also think that there's some obvious things that are out there. I mean, you're going to give each of these people, we've limited them to like 30 seconds for an introduction. And I know that I've heard back channel stuff where there's some, hand wringing over that. Like, that's just not enough time for me to talk about me. I'll be honest with you folks, having been a candidate a number of times now, the background piece does matter. But you talking about you ain't that exciting for people listening. They really do care about the things that you stand for and what you want to do. Now, if those things are at odds with some of the things you've done in your background, well, then that might be fodder for the conversation too. But 30 seconds, I mean, it should be enough to get that out and get people excited about wanting to go to your website or whatever. Then there's going to be the obvious questions about things and I'm not giving away the farm here. Things related to something like what's your first priority, when you get it, stuff like that. Those are the obvious ones. But the other questions, the substantive ones, there's just only so many things that you can ask. And what I really want to try to avoid, and in talking with Ernest, I think he does too, is not just the filibuster thing, which I'm less worried about because we have these time limits. I don't think we got set up by the women of Weld with a kill switch, though, off the microphone. And the reason for that is 10 people are probably sharing 4 or 5 microphones. So it's not built for success that way. But I just don't want platitudes. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you listen to any debate, the presidential one included, doesn't matter the party. This isn't a partisan thing. Politicians love to not answer the question. They love to give platitudes. One of the things that I tried to do when I was a candidate, and I say tried because you can't be 100%, is when someone would ask a yes or no question, I always tried to lead with the answer and then the explanation. No, and here's why, or yes, and here's why. I always got good feedback on that from the people that attended. Like, I really appreciated you answering the question, because you and I both know when you sit and listen to these debates and these forums, you can hear when someone is not answering the question, especially when it lends itself to the obvious yes or no. And so when you hear someone, when you ask someone, hey, would you support, I'm using the same example that we used before, would you support a congressionally passed, a federal ban on abortion? You get people talking about, well, I can't believe that this, and I'm so happy that Trump appointed these judges and then we overturned Roe versus Wade. None of that is the answer. None of it is the answer. What I'd love to hear, but I can't make these folks do it. What I'd love to hear is, no, I wouldn't, and here's why. Or yes, and let me tell you why. That, to me, is the kind of thing that listeners are like, okay, I got it. I get their position. There are some people at the end of the answer, you're like, was that a yes-ish? A no, kinda? So I'd love to get to questions that can help us get to that. Now, you cut loose the prosecutor in me, I will ask the kind of leading questions of candidates where we will get to the answer. It just won't be in the time limits that the women of Weld want, but we will get to an answer, folks. So I need your help. 303-696-1971. Help me craft these questions for these folks. Let's take a look here at the texts that have come in too. Here's another. Ask them if in Congress, are they going to act like Matt Gaetz and just cause problems? Well, I'm not. That's an interesting question. I'm not sure that I'd ask it in that way, but do you know what a good question is? Who is it in the House of Representatives right now that you look up to as a leader? Or who do you look up to as a model for how you'd like to be in fact, I'm going to write that one down. Thank you, Texter. It's really your question. I'm just changing the words of it. Which role model? Because you're going to hear some people say, oh, MTG. Or some are going to say, hell, Lauren Boebert could say, I look to me. I'm my own. I mean, I could see that too. You could also have people say Jim Jordan. And when you hear that, you begin to get a sense of, okay, I see which part of the party they fall into. Ken, I think, is or was one of the original members of the Freedom Caucus. He may still be a member. I can't remember. You might ask questions like that. Are you a member of the Freedom Caucus? I think Lauren Boebert is. Things like that. But anything to try to get an understanding of who is it that they look out there in Congress and say, I want to be like Mike or whatever. And then maybe the follow-up question is, you have 30 seconds to tell us why. Why that person? I like Elise Stefanik. I love the way she handled herself and took on those presidents. Okay, great. But that just gives you a sense of who that person is. Texter, nice job. Good question right there. Another text, and this is a reference. Oh, yeah. This is a reference to Vincent Bugliosi, prosecutor for Helter Skelter, which, as you know from the first part of the show, it is the, can it be already? The 53rd anniversary of the conviction of Charles Manson for the LaBianca Tate murders. It says Bugliosi also wrote a book on the OJ trial. You know what? That's true. He wrote that book that took it apart, that basically said this thing was mishandled from the word jump. And that's from the LA County DA's office that he was in when he tried Charles Manson. So, I mean, this is a guy who's in a position of know. You're absolutely right about that. Listen, we keep talking our way out of this time thing. I want to get to this DeWitt thing. I'm not sure I'm going to have time after this break to do it. So we'll definitely start the 7 o'clock hour with that. Hell, we might even play a little bit of sound and start a conversation about that and some other resignations that have taken place. But keep those text questions coming in. They are helpful. My name is George. This is my show, The George Show, at 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll 'em Out Shelves, your clutter transformation experts, create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll 'em Out Shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly to clear the clutter. Contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll 'em Out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Hey, Geronimo, talk me down in that last minute at 56. Just make sure I know. Thanks. 303-696-1971 is the number. We've got some text questions coming in. I want to get to those before we end this segment. Here's a good one from our friend Joan. What is your strongest trait that would make you a good congressman? Looking for able to work together and stand solid. Here's another, something on the Bobcat. Oh, BLM approves new Eastern. That's not our topic right now. Role model question is very good. Here's one. Abortion. The right has screeched for years. It must be left to the states. Well, you got what you wanted, but the outcome isn't what you wanted. So now there must be a federal ban on abortion. Well, which is it? Rank hypocrisy. Ask that question, please, Suzanne. I do think that's an important question. If we're going to be a party of principle, what's the principle? Is the principle that this was a matter to be resolved by the states, or is the principle no abortion at all times, or whatever it is, no matter how we get there? I'm not the latter. I'm definitely the former. Has everyone's skeletons or life infractions been revealed, or will they reveal tonight all of their arrests, scuffles with the law, number of times and reasons they were sent to the principal's office, kindergarten graduation, blah, 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 blah. Each part of it. I think there's interesting questions about that. I do think that arrests, criminal conduct, I think that stuff is relevant. We've seen it play out this week in a very high profile way with our own General Assembly. But some of this stuff, like what you don't want to devolve into with these, is the rumor mill stuff, or I heard that you blank, or unless the person actually has 2 or 3 families on the side, that's the kind of rumor stuff you don't want to get into. But if it's something documented, if it's something public, statement you made, something like that, that feels very different to me. That feels like that is fodder for sure. Here's another. Ask why Congress keeps passing CR bills. Wasn't the CR supposed to be only in emergencies? You know what? I'm writing that one down too. You guys have some great ones. Thank you, G. Why all the CR bills? Why can't we pass a damn budget? Why can't these folks? I mean, you're in the majority, albeit by a handful of votes, but why can't we pass a budget? At least send it over to the Senate for them to weigh in on, instead of this constant last minute, we're about to turn the lights off, everybody. Who wants to fork over another 90 days of bills or money to pay bills? That's another great question. You guys have done a really good job here, but I want to leave this open to you throughout the show. We have 3 more hours together. We're going to talk about other things, but as you come up with these questions, you call in at 303-696-1971 or text in. You're helping me do my job. I should be more prepared than this, but I actually like to rely upon the listeners. Here's another one. You have to ask a border sanctuary city question. Gee, how much time? Oh, well, stick around. We're going to cover some Arizona resignations, some Colorado resignations. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Well, welcome back to hour 2 of 4. It is George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. Yesterday, we spent a lot of time talking to you about a breaking story. You really don't see a lot of this, by the way, on the conservative media stuff. I'm not sure why that is, but we have the opportunity here to talk to you about a whole bunch of things that other stations won't, and I appreciate that. And I'm talking about even like the big guys, the Fox guys. There's a dude named Jeff DeWitt. He was the chairman of the GOP. He was the David Williams of Arizona. And if you'll remember yesterday, we played sound from a recorded a recorded meeting that he had with Kari Lake, who was the runner-up for governor of Arizona in the last election, claims that the election was stolen. No court has ever found that. And I think she's done there. But she's running for the U.S. Senate. And in the polling, she's running neck and neck with the Democrat challenger for that seat. Now, that seat is currently held by Kristen Sinema. She has, unaffiliated. She is now an independent, if that's what they call them down in Arizona. And I don't know that she stands a chance of winning. I haven't looked at any polling. But Kari Lake does, because she's running neck and neck with this guy. Well, there was a recording that was made, as you remember from yesterday's show, in March of 2023. That's like 10 months ago, where it sounded like Jeff DeWitt was trying to buy her off from running. Now, you got to listen to this thing. Listen to, and do you have some of that sound from yesterday, G?
Yes.
Is there a number at which
I can be bought? That's what it's about.
you could take a pause for a couple of years?
No.
They go right back.
No. 10 million, 20 million, 30, no. A billion, no. This is not about money. This is about our country. I think it's disturbing that they would that anybody would think this is.
I'm not, to be fair, even me, I'll say this. I want a fresh face right now for the reason that I've never seen anyone. I can't think of a single person in a federal race who lost running the law. I can't think of it. You can think of it.
I'm not going to let these people who hate our country tell me not to run. You should call them and tell them to get behind me. So what's going on? I'm assuming this is our friend.
Oh, this is back east. There are very powerful people that want to keep you out.
I don't know when they do.
But they're willing to put their money where their mouth is in a big way. So, conversation never aired.
Interesting. That was Jeff DeWitt, former GOP chair. He then issues a statement yesterday. You could tell this was coming. When this thing broke, and people have called in to say, well, Kari Lake didn't release it, so there's no blowback on her for this. Someone else released it. And it's like, but she recorded the conversation. Now, there's something about DeWitt's statement here that leads up to his resignation that it's illuminating. Some of it is an attempt to shift blame probably where it doesn't belong, but he does give a different perspective, and one that we lacked yesterday. So there are portions of this letter I want to read to you so that you can appreciate what happened. I think when I heard the recording, maybe like you, I thought this was a state GOP chair that came to visit a prospective candidate, or they were sitting down in an office somewhere having this conversation. Well, according to DeWitt's statement that he released, easily locatable, by the way, on Twitter and other social media, it was in her living room that she recorded this thing. And so I want to read to you this paragraph that he describes what has happened. Now, some of the things that he talks about leading up to this were about the part, and you know this tune because we've heard it here in Colorado. When I took over the helm of the party, it was in financial disarray. There was no transparency, organizationally weak, all that other stuff. Where have we heard that before? But then he gets to this paragraph, and I want to read this to you. Contrary to the notion of me being an enemy of Lake's, this conversation was recorded while I was actually employing Lake in my private company. In fact, for over a year and a half, we had many conversations where I was looking out for her financial interests. The ethical breach in her recording of our conversation, while Lake was my employee, raises serious legal and moral concerns. This act of recording was not just a betrayal of trust, but also a violation of the fiduciary responsibilities of an employee. Contrary to accusations of bribery, my discussions were transparent and intended to offer perspective, not coercion. Our relationship was based on friendship, and the conversation that is now being scrutinized was an open, unguarded exchange between friends in the living room of her house. I genuinely believed I was offering a helpful perspective to someone I considered a friend. Wow. Does that change anything for you? Does that change anything you think about this particular recording? It does a little bit for me. It does a little bit for me. Because when I thought this was state party GOP chair meeting with a prospective candidate who he'd obviously known for a while, she'd run for governor as well, I thought, okay, this looks like a ham-handed approach to try to bribe her out of running, which I think carries its own legal consequences. But if it's longtime friends who he has employed in her business, in his business, and they're sitting in her living room having a conversation, now I think it's bribish still, no doubt about it. It's bribish, saying, hey, there's powers that are out there and blah, blah, blah. And it sounds like he's carrying water for someone. And it would be great to know who he's carrying water for. But it does feel different, doesn't it? Doesn't it feel less? I mean, again, taking nothing away from the fact that this is a guy who's trying to encourage her to not run on behalf of others who have made it clear they would find a job for her that would pay her a lucrative amount of money. That's really the backdrop of this. Taking away nothing from that. Do you feel at all like maybe a little bit of this was, and I'm using this term very gingerly here only because of what we just said, a little bit of a betrayal, in that this guy thinks he's having a conversation with a friend, with someone that he likes well enough that he has hired her during a period of time that she had no job. Remember, she'd lost. What do you think about that? Does it change your view of this at all? Now, it's a 2-pager, and there's more to this. Here's a little bit I'll share with you. Since our conversation where I advised Lake to postpone her campaign and aim for the governor's position in 2 years, that's what he's talking about here, she has been on a mission to destroy me. It was a suggestion made in good faith, believing it could benefit both her future prospects and the party's overall strategy. The release of our conversation by Lake confirms a disturbing tendency to exploit private interactions for personal gain and increases concerns about her habit of secretly recording personal and private conversations. Whoa, a habit. Now, I talked about this yesterday in terms of the recording, and some people are like, you're blaming the victim. Well, one, she's not a victim. I don't know how you get to, you know who the victim of bribery is. It tends to be somebody else. When someone's offering you money to do something, you're not really a victim. Extortion is different, but this is bribery. So I don't see her as a victim, but man, it feels far more calculated, doesn't it? It feels far more deceptive, and it makes you wonder, had she recorded all of their conversations? And who else's conversations is she recording? I mean, let me just play this out. If you're a member of the Republican caucus in the U.S. Senate and Kari Lake gets sworn in, do you trust her? Really, do you trust her? Given her penchant for the media savvy, but also the media look at me stuff, her willingness to use a guy who employed her, a guy who paid her money out of his company to keep her afloat, her friend in her living room, if she's willing to do that, aside from all the MAGA stuff, would you trust her? If you're a U.S. Senator in the Republican caucus, would you hold a private meeting with her? Would you invite her into meetings with others to discuss strategy, tactics, or to just crap talk the other side? Would you do that now? I mean, this sounds like more than a one-off. And that makes sense too, because how could she know what this dude was going to say? So I'd be interested to hear from Kari Lake. Honestly, it doesn't take away from the fact that this looks like a straight up offer on behalf of other people to buy her out of the race, which is reprehensible, absolutely reprehensible, and we should get to the bottom of it. We should know who it was, who these powers that be are. We should get to know that. But doesn't part of you wonder now, could I ever trust Kari Lake? Or do you think she just knows who to record and when? Because otherwise it sounds like this allegation from this guy is that she has a habit of secretly recording these conversations. Now, that's a whole page out of a 2-page thing where he owns no responsibility for what he's done. That, too, is a problem. When he says he's looking out for financial interests, come on, folks. Yes, you're looking out for her financial interests, but my guess is you're doing it for politically and personally motivated reasons as well. He wants her to step down for 2 years, to take a pause and run for governor. Gee, you found some other sound, by the way, that's kind of a news clip of this thing. I meant to play that earlier. Do you have that?
The tape speaks for itself. Jeff DeWitt, the chairman, though, says that it was deceptively edited. And just a few moments ago, he did, in fact, resign from his position. He said, in part, quote, in a lengthy statement announcing his resignation, that Kari Lake's team threatened to release a new, more damaging recording if he didn't resign, suggesting that her campaign all but blackmailed him into this resignation here this afternoon. DeWitt also asserted that the secret recording, quote, confirms a disturbing tendency to exploit private interactions for personal gain, going on to even suggest and openly suggest that has Kari Lake recorded her conversations with former President Donald Trump. This is all coming to a head before the Arizona GOP's major annual meeting here this Saturday. Donald Trump is flying to Arizona Friday night to speak at what they're calling the AZ GOP Fest. All of this indicates that this is anything but an AZ GOP Fest that we should be anticipating here this weekend. But now, just literally in the last 2 minutes, Kari Lake's team, a senior advisor to her team, has now just responded and denied that they all but blackmailed Jeff DeWitt into resigning. So this is all playing out literally minute by minute at this point. But in Arizona, a key critical state, not only in the presidential race, but also in the Senate race, they have an infrastructure that is deeply in question right now. And this comes just 1 week after the Michigan GOP voted to oust their chairwoman. And so for the Republican Party right now in 2 key battleground states, you could say that their state parties are in disarray at really critical times.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It highlights something else, though, that I wanted to read to you from this letter from Jeff DeWitt, former GOP chair. It's a 2-pager, 2 full pages, not like, one of those pages where there's just a paragraph at the other. Here's some stuff where it says, I said things I regret, but I realized when hearing Lake's recording that I was set up. I believe she orchestrated this entire situation to have control over the state party, and it is obvious from the recording that she crafted her performance responses with the knowledge that she was recording it, intending to use this recording later to portray herself as a hero in her own story. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, the throwaway line is, I said things I regret. Nope, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. I need to read, I should have never, ever gone down the road of trying to carry water for someone else that wanted to buy you out of the race. That was a huge misjudgment. That's a kind of sentence you want, but I said things I regret, comma, and then the rest of it is I'm a victim. But this part is interesting. When you listen to Kari Lake's answers, don't they seem too perfect? And by too perfect, I mean like intended for a broader audience. Like, where is the profanity? And what I mean by that, and it doesn't have to be profane, but where is that outrage? Where is her sense of, what are you talking about, man? These people have been trying to keep me out of, where's the indignation? There's none of that. It's just, well, they really ought to back me. And no, they can't buy me out. Not for $1 billion. They can't buy. It is almost delivered with a certain, I don't know what it is. And I guess I should have used the French je ne sais quoi, but it's delivered in a way that's very performative. Now, that could all be natural. She is a media person, and she's very, very good out there on the stump. But this guy's like, You know, I should have picked up on this during the conversation. It was like she was reading for a part, you know, like this was going to end up being publicized. So then he goes on. This guy goes on and says, this morning, I was determined to fight for my position. However, and this is telling, however, a few hours ago, I received an ultimatum from Lake's team. Resign today or face the release of a new, more damaging recording. I'm truly unsure of its contents, but considering our numerous past open conversations as friends, I've decided not to take the risk. I'm resigning as Lake requested in the hope that she will honor her commitment to cease her attacks, allowing me to return to the business sector, a field I find much more logical and prefer over politics. Dang. So this dude didn't step down out of a sense of, I guess maybe I shouldn't have made the offer to buy her out of the race. That's not why he stepped down, folks. Because I guess he was going to defend on, I wasn't really doing that. Although it sure sounds like that in the recording. Instead, he's stepping down because she's got stuff on him and he doesn't know what it is. But my guess is the dude's memory tells him, man, we had some pretty frank conversations about Brnovich, who was the former attorney general who had run and lost for a statewide race, should have won. Great dude. Or someone else, or maybe even comments that he made about Trump or other people or other personal things. But the revelation here is that Kari Lake's team said, she's been recording you all along. She's been recording all of your conversations. Now, could it be a bluff? Could be. But you can't know. And so Jeff is stuck, man. He is stuck. Oh my God, what did I say and when? So I want you to picture that for your own life. If you knew that someone that you used to hang out with at work or one of your buddies was recording all of the conversations that you guys had, not about work necessarily, but at lunch or over drinks or in the backyard, if you knew that they were recording all those things, wouldn't you have conducted yourself differently? Wouldn't you have said things in a different way or not at all? And so now Kari Lake has created this situation where, and I think the bigger question is, moving forward, if you're Kari Lake, and I still don't have a very good answer, folks. None of the things you offered me made much sense to me, where it's like, why would she delay 10 months to deliver this? I don't know. Was she recording him for another 10 months so she had the ammo to basically extort him out of this position? Because, by the way, that's a kind of act of extortion too, isn't it? To get somebody to do something under the threat of doing something bad to them. Now, she's not the victim of that, but he is. But I don't want to see him as a victim here because he's the one that created this situation. But that thing, how does she go and conduct herself in the U.S. Senate after something like this? How could she work with someone? I mean, that's craziness, isn't it? If you're a U.S. senator from another state, why in the world would you ever have a face-to-face conversation with Kari Lake that was candid, that was blunt, or even anything other than, hello, the weather is great today. I think the weathermen are crooks or something. Well, why would you do anything other than that, knowing that she's out there kind of body camming this whole thing, but just the audio and just in secret? Fascinating, fascinating. 303-696-1971 is the number. There's a whole bunch of texts that are coming in here, and I sure do want to get to them. And there are people from Arizona as well. Someone asking, and I'll get to some of these, isn't that blackmail? You know, I'm going to take a look at that. I don't know if it is or it isn't. But my guess is this guy's in no position to allege that, because then she would potentially release all the bad recordings and stuff. But maybe he doesn't care anymore. Maybe he thinks it would destroy his business. I don't know. But if I'm a U.S. senator and I hear this story and she gets elected, why would I work with her? I want her vote. I want her support. But why would I ever bring her into the inner circle? And if you are, let's play this out even more. This guy says these were a selective recording, which means they talked about other things, or maybe it was edited. I didn't hear him say that, but maybe it was. Do you now record all of your conversations with Kari Lake? So you make sure you have the complete thing. That's a trend, folks, in politics that I hadn't seen before. But you know how the media, the Nine Newses and others, when they record someone, when they do the interview, they cut things out because they have a narrative that they want to tell, a story they want to tell. They want to get to their gotcha moment or their setup moment. And so they cut out a lot of the other contextual stuff. It's just how they've always done business, and they always will. And because of their political leanings, it tends to cost Republicans and conservatives. I know this. I talked to you about it yesterday with Kyle Clark's tweet out there, taking quotes from our show. He omitted all the things where I said, hey, driving drunk is reckless and dangerous, and like firing a gun up into an air. You don't know where the bullet can come down, but it would kill someone if it hit him, that kind of thing. No, he cut all that stuff out and basically distilled down my discussion about character and what crimes are indicators of character to whether or not a DUI was worse than shoplifting a candy bar. See, that's what they do. So what we've seen now, and this is smart, is that candidates have someone, usually a volunteer or some staffer, come along, and at every interaction with known media, they'll record it. They'll record the whole thing so that if the media tries to cut up what happens and post it, they can then post the raw video or the contextual piece of that video. And frankly, that ought to be what happened when any candidate sits down with 4, 7, 9, 31, it doesn't matter. They ought to have someone there to record the actual interview in case it gets edited in a way that's misleading. My point is, now is Kari Lake in that position? Can you no longer trust her such that if you're another politician, a member of the leadership of the party, or even another U.S. senator, you now record every conversation with her just out of fear that she's gonna snip it out a little piece. She's gonna Kyle Clark you. So you have to have the whole thing. I don't know. This is fascinating stuff. 303-696-1971. Lots of texts coming in, and I promise to get to those. I'd love to have the conversation with you. Can you trust Kari Lake anymore? Again, this is aside from Jeff DeWitt. Dude was 100% wrong, 100% wrong for trying to suggest that there were people out there that would give her money to keep her from running. Because in that living room, he may have thought he was her friend, but he was also the state party chair. And I don't know how you take that hat off in that room like that. But he did it. He did it. And he's paying the price for it. There may be more of a price to pay, but we're going to discuss the Kari Lake thing. Again, this has nothing to do with whether or not she should be a senator. Well, I guess a little bit. It has nothing to do with whether or not she's got the right conservative principles or she's Trump enough. None of that. It's just interesting to me. Could you trust her after this? And if you say yes, how do you know that? How do you know that? 303-696-1971. Here's a guy you can always trust, Dan Kaplis. Dan's a guy who's going to give it to you straight. There are a lot of attorneys out there who are chasing the personal injury cases that are around the metro area. They advertise on the billboards and the trains and the benches and all that other stuff like that. And they're chasing volume. And so they will tell you at the front end when they sign you up, oh, this sounds horrible. This case is worth I'm going to drill down. And really what they're trying to do is to get you to sign up so they can quick roll into another settlement, put some money in your hand, which will feel real good in the short term. And then they'll take their 33 to 40% cut, and then they move on to the next one. That's just not the model Dan has ever had. Dan will sit down and talk with you about the case, and based on what you say, he will tell you, I don't think your case is worth very much. When you can find an attorney that's going to tell you all the bad about your case, that's the attorney that you hire, and Dan will do that. He'll say, yep, this is horrible what happened, but here's the problem. And this was something, I can't remember if it was Dan or another attorney, a friend of mine, Phil, that told me this, but the better your life is after an accident, the lower the settlement. And so you want to have a low settlement value thing because that means your life's pretty good. The more value to your case usually means your life is worse. And so in that situation, that righteous situation, when someone's negligence, recklessness, or whatever caused your injury, you pick up the phone and you call Dan, and he and his partner, Bob or Wahid, and the other attorneys they have in the firm, and they got some. I can't remember how many they had. At one point, it was huge. And then they ended up focusing on some former prosecutors. I mean, they're really trial-minded here, justice-minded. Give them a call, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. or you can check them out at dancapitalislaw.com. That's Capitalist, C-A-P-L-I-S, dancapitalislaw.com. When we come back, your calls, your many, many texts, and this topic right here is George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, talking about Kari Lake, the revelations, at least from Jeff DeWitt, who resigned and on his way out the door threw some shade at Kari Lake, suggesting that this recording was between friends and he'd actually employed her in her business, I presume for good money. And I think that was a function of him trying to help out a friend, but also of a future candidate. He's the guy that offered up this on behalf of some unknown people on the East Coast, the potential for a lucrative job or something if she were to just simply delay running for the Senate and instead focus on the governor. I wonder if that would have been different, by the way, before we get to the phones. I wonder if he'd come out and said, hey, there are powers that be on the East Coast that would much rather see you as governor, or there are people, there are forces, there are people in Arizona that just want to see you as governor. And so if you can just not run for the Senate and focus on governor, because by God, Arizona needs fixing. We got to rescue Arizona. You're the only person that can do it. And these businessmen and women in Arizona, they want to give you a lucrative job for 2 years to float you while you run for governor. Doesn't that have a different feel to it? I mean, would that be looked at as an attempt to bribe her or buy her out of the Senate election? Or would we say, man, that's great. These people are motivated to see Kari Lake in a position of authority. But that's what this guy's suggesting, is that he wanted to see her run for governor. And part of that discussion was, hey, I got to get her out of the Senate race. And he says these things. And then he takes very little responsibility for it, other than there are some things that I regret saying. That's just not enough. 303-696-1971. What do you think of this whole thing? And could you trust someone that records your conversations without your knowledge or your permission, especially after something like this? Let's get right to the phone lines here. I had this thing up. Here we go. Pete from Centennial. You're on 710 KNUS. Pete, what do you think?
Hey, George. Hey, I'm only calling in because to have a conversation like this with you, because you really provide insight into Colorado politics and personalities. I'm just very grateful that you help us understand these things, especially with your skills as a prosecutor. But I've been a supporter and encourager of Kari Lake and defender of Kari Lake. But boy, if what's going on here is true, she's a totally different personality than what I've been supporting.
Why do you say that? What's the
morally
thing in this story that caused, first off, by the way, thank you for the very generous words. Please call back every hour. But in addition to that, what's the thing about this story where you have now rethought Kari Lake?
Well, I heard yesterday your presentation of it from what you had, and I was kind of dubious, but it didn't sound real, and it didn't make sense. Like you said that her reaction actually equated to being performative, and the more I thought about it, and then I thought about his intonation and when he suggested the idea to her, it just sounded like, if he's making a suggestion like that, why does he sound so flippant and so you know, it just, and now in hearing, of course, there are so many parts of this story that need to be filled in, like what was the job and what did it all entail, and how did he have her employed? But I get the impression now that she's a confidence builder, and she, I mean, who would want a friend or work with someone or associate with someone who is going to go in there and create confidence with you, and then feel you're having just a frank, honest, candid conversation where you go so far as to begin to hypothesize about possibilities, which a lot of this could have been, and then to have someone take and turn that on you when they kind of led you down that path to speculate in such a way. And then if she truly did blackmail him with a phone. I mean, I was shocked yesterday to hear the guy was resigning, and hearing that she possibly suggested a blackmail that, hey, you think that's bad? Remember that conversation we were having in such and such a time? I mean, how many times have you been? I mean, heck, the guy, who's your partner there who's not there today?
Billy T.
Jimmy, yeah. Just think of how he could blackmail you if he wanted to.
Oh, listen, I've only recently started thinking about that, and I realize, and because Billy's not going to be listening this morning because he's off, probably doing some other work related to snakes, I have now thought to myself, if Billy were to come to me and simply say, I need a check for X number of dollars, I'd have to start financing it because there are conversations we've had that simply aren't for other ears, That's sort of the point.
But I don't think Billy has that morality. And if this is the morality of Carrie Lake, this is shocking.
It's fascinating, Pete, because you have been, as you've said, a supporter of hers, and I wonder if this changes other people's perceptions of her. The other thing I'd ask you, especially in the context of what does she do if she gets elected, and she could be elected. If you had someone in your life, whether in business or personal life, that you discovered had been recording your conversations, how do you deal with them in the future? I mean, what do you do with them?
Well, I think back on my past careers and personalities that, you find that these people really dislike me, and these people really have no good intent in their relationship with me. Yet, there was a time when I was just bearing my soul and being frank and honest and candid. But so much of our human interaction is just processing information. And if you can't even process information with people and find that they're going to take that processing and turn it into like Carrie Lake is a professional media person.
Yeah.
Maybe she doesn't even know she's this conniving and crooked, which it possibly could be.
Yeah, it's interesting, Craig. I love the phone call. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, please call in again, man. Thanks for listening. Craig's line is open at 303-696-1971. Something that Craig said made me think about this as well. Is this the new norm? How about imagine our gong show of a General Assembly there under the Gold Dome. Is this now the blueprint? No, not the one that turned Colorado blue, but you know what I'm talking about. Is this the blueprint for state legislators? Like, isn't this the kind of thing you would expect from a Tim Hernandez? I mean, isn't this an Elizabeth Epps kind of a move? And if you're now in the legislature, aren't you freaked out that all of these people who are ostensibly Democrats, I mean, that's what they call themselves, but they're from another wing of the party, maybe even in the Republican Party. Is this the new norm? You're now going to record surreptitiously all of these conversations you have with each other for future use, for either to blackmail them into leaving a leadership position or doing something else. I mean, this is fascinating. What do you do with this? Because Arizona's a one-party consent state. 303-696-1971 is our number. Nick, you're on 710. Nick, what do you think?
I think that your friend Craig, who just called in as Pete, and you ended the conversation calling him Craig 3 times. So I think that was a setup, but that's not why I called.
Nick, hang on. There's a caller after you named Craig, and if I called Pete Craig, that was a mistake on my part, just because I have these 3 names on the call sheet, but I don't know if that means it's a setup. But can you do us a favor? I'd love to hear what you're saying and accusing me of. Is there any way you could take us off speakerphone so we can all do that?
Well, I drive a truck, and so I know it's hard to hear. So if it doesn't work for you, I understand that. I really do. But
well, so let's do our best. What do you got?
I like how you started out your conversation blaming DeWitt and recognizing him as like as a criminal, and then you blame the victim. Then you spend the rest of your show blaming the victim. Has it ever
Well, how
crossed
is she
your
a
mind that
victim?
maybe
What's she a victim of, Nick?
a guy that says, "Oh, very powerful people want you out of the race," and by the way, we'll pay you handsomely just to step aside. And he's the leader of the Republican Party, supposed to be supporting her. And you call that some sort of a frank conversation when he says, "Of course, please don't tell anybody I said these things, because then it would stop us from accomplishing our goals in the future." And you
Yeah,
think
but Nick,
that's okay.
what is she a victim of? There was no
I just
threat
told
in
you.
there.
You tell me. I just told you. Now you tell me what a great Republican leader of Arizona that you witnessed. Go ahead.
No, I've never said that. In fact, I said the opposite. I said I think that whatever his explanation was, I regret some of the things I say, was wholly inadequate, and he owes us a lot more than that. In fact, he owes us to tell us who he was talking about the East Coast, now that this thing has become the issue it's become. But that wasn't my question to you, man. You can't just declare Kari Lake is a victim. If this turns out to be true, that if this was, hey, I've been recording all of these conversations surreptitiously to use for some other purpose down the road, and if you're looking for someone who got the threat in this situation, it was Jeff DeWitt. Now, Jeff DeWitt never threatened Kari Lake. What he did was inexcusable, and that is to suggest that there were powers that be that would give her money to not seek political office. I realize he's trying to say, hey, that was in the context of being a friend, but you can't do that when you're the state party chair, even if that state party chair is your friend. However, there was no threat. There was no, hey, if you don't get out, they're going to ruin you. They're going to destroy you. You know who used that language? Kari Lake. If you don't resign as state party chair now that I've held on to this recording for 10 months, we're going to release other recordings I made that you didn't know about. That is the threat. So, Nick, do you have an answer to any of that?
And I wish she would release all of the audio that she has that is apparently even worse. He's such a good Republican representative that he resigned the same day it was released.
Yeah, I don't know if that has anything to do with him being a good Republican representative. I think the dude got caught with his hand in the cookie jar or his pants down or whatever other aphorism you want to use. But I think that's what happened. Yeah, for sure. I get it. But I don't know why Kari Lake is a victim here.
You don't want to talk about it, but you get it. Here's one. How about
what do you mean I don't want to talk about it? Buddy, I talked about it. You even said I talked about it. What do you want me to do? Should the whole show be Jeff DeWitt's a horrible human being? Is that the talk radio piece you think that has some traction to it? What a horrible guy. What a bad guy. I'm glad he left the party. We did that part in a couple paragraphs. The bigger question now is the last person standing is the person that threatened him to get him to leave the race. And the question then is, could you ever trust her again?
Okay. Point out where I have 2 points. One is point out where she threatened him.
I couldn't hear that. Point out what part?
What she did that threatened him.
The part where she said either resign or I'm going to release all of these other recordings you don't know about, but try to remember some of the conversations that you thought were frank and candid and private. Those are the ones I'm going to release. That's the threat.
Oh, no, that's just a friend being a friend. It's just like he was being a friend to her to buy her out of the race.
You think that's the same thing? If you don't do this, I will do this. You think that's the same thing as, hey, man, there's people that want to get you out of this race by offering you a lucrative job. You feel like that's the same thing as a threat to do someone harm.
So the leader of the Republican Party in Arizona comes to, it almost sounds like it was in her house. I have no idea where it was at.
He said it was in her living room.
Okay, yeah, okay. I didn't hear that part. I didn't follow that. She's eating a sandwich or something, and he comes there to tell her that, oh, of course, I agree with you completely, but the powers that be in Washington, D.C. want you out of the race because they can't put you in their pocket. And she goes, oh, they want to be on my team. No, they want you on their team. And you don't play ball, Terry.
Yeah.
So, and then
what's the threat?
You say, friend is from the East Coast, which you brought up, and then you gloss over and you want to, of course, blame Carrie Lake. You're the
Hold on. I'm not blaming Carrie Lake for what Jeff DeWitt did. He's on the hook for that, man. I've never blamed her for what he did. I'm asking the obvious question, and that is, can you trust her again? And if so, why? Why can you trust her? Because we know she'd only record the conversations of bad things, or she'd only record the conversations with her friend and employer and state party chair Jeff DeWitt. That's how I can trust her. Could you trust her again?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Absolutely.
Buddy, I can't hear you there. Nick, we'll put you on hold. We got to cut away for a break anyway. If you come back, we'll continue the conversation. Craig, I want to get to you as well. We've got other callers on the line, 303-696-1971. I'm certain that there are those folks out there that are going to view this through an ideological prism and say, you're blaming Kari Lake. I love Kari Lake. She should be the vice president. She's awesome. And anything you say negative about her means that that's not what this is about. This is a converse. It could have been anybody. It could have been Ted Cruz. It could have been MTG. It could have been Jim Jordan. It could have been Kevin McCarthy. It could have been Nancy Pelosi. Who cares, right? Like, she's the vehicle for this conversation because she's the one that did it. But the bigger question is, if you find out someone you're working with is recording all of your friends' conversations, do you trust them again? Can you work with them in the same way? Can you have a candid conversation with them? How do you treat someone you believe is recording you all the time? 303-696-1971 is our number. Can I tell you about Mitch Floria? Oh, yeah. Mitch Floria is the guy that pretties up the interior of your house on such a cost-effective basis through upgrading the countertops in your bathroom, your kitchen, your laundry room, maybe that basement that you're looking to finish. You can look around and call around, and everybody has their own version of a deal, but nobody has the craftsmanship and the quality of countertop installation and products that Mitch Floria does. We could go all day about the backstory. In fact, I think we're supposed to have Mitch in the studio here. Maybe it's next week. I think we're getting Mitch in. I can't wait to talk to him again. But this is a guy who says, look, bottom line is, I don't care who you are, you're going to get wholesale prices. Wow. But you tell him you're a George Show listener, you get the wholesale prices, plus they throw in the bathroom countertop for free with the kitchen countertop. So if you thought I'm only going to be able to afford to do one room, nope. You're going to get to do two. But if you say, I only want to upgrade one room, he said, that's okay. Then I'll throw in the sink for free. Check him out and his selection at theartofgranite.com, theartofgranite.com, or give him a call, 303-386-5919, 303-386-5919. You're listening to The George Show at 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Callers on the line. You can keep calling in. If you get the open line, great. If you get the busy, I'll keep telling you when they open up. Here's where we're at. We've got Craig and John on the line. I promise I'll get to you guys, but it's not fair to give you 10 seconds on a phone call. Hang with us. We'll come back. We'll keep this topic going. Stick around. What to do about Kari Lake? Do you trust her anymore? George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here. We're halfway through the Thursday show on the George Show 710 KNUS. Let me reset the topic a bit for those of you that are just jumping in. Pretty lively conversation over the last hour, some differing views, lots of texts coming in. I'm going to try to get to those. We also have callers, Craig and John, on the line. I'll get to them as well. And one open line at 303-696-1971. The question is really something that has developed out of the Kari Lake Jeff DeWitt incident. I don't know what else you call it. Scandal that took place in Arizona that really came to a head yesterday with the resignation of Jeff DeWitt. And for those of you that don't remember everything that happened, we played this clip in the 8 o'clock. Just bear with me, and Craig and John will get to you right after this, and then we'll get into the text and other stuff. G, if you could just play that clip again of what happened yesterday, and then we'll start the conversation.
The tape speaks for itself. Jeff DeWitt, the chairman, though, says that it was deceptively edited. And just a few moments ago, he did, in fact, resign from his position. He said, in part, quote, in a lengthy statement announcing his resignation, that Kari Lake's team threatened to release a new, more damaging recording if he didn't resign, suggesting that her campaign all but blackmailed him into this resignation here this afternoon. DeWitt also asserted that the secret recording, quote, confirms a disturbing tendency to exploit private interactions for personal gain, going on to even suggest and openly suggest that has Kari Lake recorded her conversations with former President Donald Trump. This is all coming to a head before the Arizona GOP's major annual meeting here this Saturday. Donald Trump is flying to Arizona Friday night to speak at what they're calling the AZ GOP Fest. All of this indicates that this is anything but an AZ GOP Fest that we should be anticipating here this weekend. But now, just literally in the last 2 minutes, Kari Lake's team, a senior advisor to her team, has now just responded and denied that they all but blackmailed Jeff DeWitt into resigning. So this is all playing out literally minute by minute at this point. But in Arizona, a key critical state, not only in the presidential race, but also in the Senate race, they have an infrastructure that is deeply in question right now. And this comes just 1 week after the Michigan GOP voted to oust their chairwoman. And so for the Republican Party right now in two key battleground states, you could say that their state parties are in disarray at really critical times.
Wow. Jeff DeWitt, now the former state party GOP chair for Arizona. He's the David Williams of Arizona, or he was. In his letter, and we read this last hour, he revealed that these were conversations that were surreptitiously recorded, he thought, between friends, and he employed Kari Lake in her living room. Fascinating developments. But some of the questions I want to ask is get your reaction to the whole thing. But two, and Nick did this when he called in from that horrible speakerphone in his truck. The suggestion that I'm victim blaming. One, Kari Lake is nobody's victim. And two, I'm not blaming her for what Jeff DeWitt said. I'm saying, what now? Is this the new norm? Can you trust anybody who records all of their otherwise private conversations? Let's get right to the phone lines. Craig, you're on 710 KNUS. What do you think?
Yeah. Kari Lake had a Rumble broadcast last night at 6.
Oh, she did. And what'd she say on that?
You didn't listen to it?
I didn't even know it existed until you said it right now.
She played the whole conversation, and then
is it different than the one you've heard on the media, Craig? Is it different than the one that we played?
No, it's the same one.
Okay.
And then she went to her CPAC speech 10 months ago.
Yeah.
Where she brought it up in her CPAC speech and pretty much described all of it, but she didn't provide the audio. And then after that, she took about a dozen questions.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions was on the employment issue.
Yeah.
According to her, Jeff was a fellow employee and not her employer. That they both worked.
So they were co-workers, is what you're saying.
The same company. They were co-workers.
Got it.
And I suggest that everybody go listen to it.
What
because
what do you think about all this,
brings
Craig?
her-
What's your
her
takeaway?
side of it.
Okay, yeah, but what's your
Well,
takeaway
on
having
the-
heard her
on
side?
on the trust issue.
Well, did she talk about why she records all of her conversations with her coworker?
She records all her well, it was about bribery, wasn't it?
Well, this particular recording was, but remember, one of the things that DeWitt alleges on his way out the door is, listen, I'm resigning because she threatened to release other audio clips and other audio tapes of recordings of conversations we've had. I don't know what they are. They could be damn. Yeah, but so the question is, did she address why she records all of her conversations with Jeff DeWitt?
How do you know she does? Did he provide evidence of that? Did he provide evidence of the threat? Or is it just his word that we're taking?
Well, I guess we're stuck with him saying it until Kari Lake agrees. Why else would
we are.
Okay.
So maybe we should listen to her side.
Well, what did she say about it is my question, Craig. I asked you, did she address it? Did she say, I've never recorded a conversation before? This is the first time. I'm asking you to tell us since you watched it.
I don't remember whether she addressed a lot of questions. It was about an hour long.
Okay, but kind of a big deal to know if this was a one-off. Like, how would she know to record this conversation?
Well, she records everything.
Okay, so you just answered the question, dude.
She goes
when I say she records every conversation, how did she address it? You said, how do you know that? You told me she does. She records every conversation. Is that true?
I don't know if she records every conversation, but when she does an interview, she records it.
Yeah, but this wasn't an interview, man.
She records all her interviews.
But this wasn't an interview, was it?
No, this was a bribe.
Okay. Yeah, well, it was, but how could she know that? Do you know what I mean? How could she know that going into the conversation?
You'll have to ask her, won't you?
Well, I know,
I'm not her spokesperson.
No, Craig, you're her cheerleader and defender, and I get that. But watching that Rumble, you had the opportunity. You have the opportunity to make us smarter. I didn't even know it existed. I'd have watched it. But did she address whether or not she records every conversation?
Trust her?
Yes.
Do you think I should trust her?
I don't know, man. I can't speak.
Her?
I don't know that I would trust anyone who surreptitiously records every conversation she has with people that think they're in private. I don't know if I can trust anybody like that.
Do you trust liars?
Well, it depends. What are they lying about? Do I look fat in these jeans, or is it something substantive?
Yesterday, in your conversation with Joe, you spread a Democrat lie about Trump, about injecting Clorox in his veins.
No, what I did was read his quote.
I need you to come up with that quote, that soundbite, where he said, you can't, because it doesn't exist.
I did. Either I invented it or I found it in a couple different media outlets. Now, they could be lying, but I'm not lying for reading the quote I got from them.
They are lying. That's a Democrat lie.
So he never said that.
No, he didn't. No, he was talking
now
about
we are going to go find the clip, my man.
He was talking about, go back to April 20th, 2020. That was the story of the day. It was Scarf Lady Burks.
Uh-huh.
It was her reaction to his explanation of a peer-reviewed study of using light, injecting light into the body and using it as a disinfectant.
Yeah,
maybe Nancy Pelosi. That was her.
Hold on, man.
That was her version of what he said.
If I read a quote of what he says and you tell me he later clarified what he meant by that, how is that a lie?
You didn't. You say that's what he says. I need you to provide the proof.
The clip of him saying it at the podium, by the way, the clip of him saying it at the presidential podium is widely available, man.
How can I trust you on anything you say about Trump when you spread Democrat lies about him?
Buddy, that clip exists. I don't know what to tell you. If you want us to go find it for you, maybe we can do that in a future show, but go Google it yourself, man. You'll find the clip of him saying it at the podium. Unless it's AI, the man said it. Now, if you're saying he tried to clarify what he meant by it or it was taken out of context, okay, but that doesn't make it a lie. A lie is saying something that you know to be untrue. And when I read his quote, I don't know it to be untrue, man. That's completely different. And it's aside from the question I've posed to you, which is, can you trust someone who records without your knowledge and without your permission everything you say? Would you be different around that person, or would you still be plain old Craig?
Should I trust you when you spread
Buddy, can you
Democrat
answer
lies?
the question? Could you answer the question?
Can you answer my question?
No, because you're not. I'm not on Craig's show. You're on my show. You called in. You made your point. I've asked you a question. When you answer my question, I will answer yours. Okay? Answer the question.
I ask you a question and you don't want to answer it.
I did. What I said is, it's not a lie. That's my answer.
You spread Democrat lies. It is a lie.
I just told you, buddy, it isn't a lie. That's the answer to your question.
It is a lie.
Yeah, okay. You we can disagree on what a lie is and what disinformation is, but I've answered your question. Now answer mine. Can you trust someone who records without your permission and your knowledge all of your private conversations with them? Can you trust that person?
How do I know that she recorded all the
sweet
private
mother of God,
conversations?
Craig? I'm giving you a hypothetical here. Take Carrie Lake out of it. I know you love her. Take her out of it. If you had anybody in your life that was recording your conversations without your knowledge or your consent, would you trust them?
I've had my conversations recorded before by people that I trust.
Dude, do you understand my question?
Do you understand my answer?
No, I don't, because it's non-responsive. You said there is no answer to the question. I've had people record my conversations. The only question before you, man, and it's an easy one. It's a yes or no, and you're welcome to explain after you give that answer, is, can you trust someone who records all of your conversations that you believe are in private, and they do it without your knowledge or your consent? That's a yes or no, Craig. That's an easy one. Do you trust them?
In certain situations, yes, I can, George. There you go.
What would those
There's
certain
your answer.
situations be, my friend?
Well, you said certain situations online, such as do I look
give me
fat
the
these
situation.
jeans?
Give me the situation. I gave you the situation.
I just gave you a situation. I just
What is
gave
it?
you a situation.
What
I've had
is it?
situations where I was recorded.
Yeah, tell us what they
conversation
are,
was
Craig. You keep
recorded.
using the word situation like it's an answer. I've asked you what situations. Craig, what situations is it okay for someone to do that?
No, I can't. No, I can't trust anybody that records. Are you recording me now, George? Are you
Yes, we
recording
are.
my conversation?
We are, and we're going to
How
publish
can
it
I
on
trust
something
you,
called a
George?
podcast. But
Okay,
you knew
so-
that when you
no,
called
I
in,
can't.
friend.
No, I
But
can't. Now,
you
now
called
can
in
I
and you
ask
knew
a
that.
question?
Yeah,
Can
but
I
buddy,
ask you a question?
yeah, as soon as I answer your
question. No, I
suggestion
can't.
that somehow that this means you can't trust me, you are consenting to be recorded, and you know you're being recorded. I'm not Kari Lake.
I answered your question, George, to your satisfaction. I fell
Well, I don't know
into
about
your
that last
gotcha
part, but go ahead
question.
with your question, Craig, before we get Jim on. Or John on, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What's your question? Craig? Craig, what's your question?
I've got so many.
I know, but you said you had one. Pick your favorite. Let's go. Craig, dead air is bad air on the radio. Do you have a question for me, or was it just postulating that if I did, I'd ask it to you? What is it?
Are you going to watch the Rumble interview?
Yeah, I'm going to go back and probably listen to it. I don't know that I can watch it, but I drive around a lot during the day. I'll probably try to find a way to listen to it. And G, if you can, I know you're listening, G, if you can find that while we're doing this and shoot me that link, that would be helpful. Is that your question, Craig? Am I going to listen to the Rumble interview?
Yesterday, there was a text on the Dominion case down in Georgia there, where the guy hacked into the Dominion machine with his pen and changed the votes right in front of Judge Totenberg in the federal court. Did you check that out?
No.
You said
No,
you were going to look
Haven't had the
into
time.
it. Did you?
Yeah, I
look
haven't had the
into
time
it?
to do it, my man.
You should do that. You should do that.
Buddy, I appreciate the advice and the interest. Thank you for calling in and having the conversation. Craig's line is open at 303-696-1971. James or John, God, I keep calling you James or Jim. Guy with the J name. You're on 710 KNUS. John, how are you?
I'm good, George. How are you?
Thanks for your patience, man. I apologize for butchering your name.
No problem. It's tough to mix up John, but that's okay.
I found a way.
Yeah. I read an account this morning that said that he had called her and said he wanted to come over and meet with her, but he couldn't discuss it over the phone. So, I mean, if she records all of her conversations, obviously that probably sent up another red flag. So, according, that would be one that she would probably record. I think
that would get my attention.
She's been a savvy media woman who's probably battled a lot as she was running for governor and all the kind of things that went on down there in Arizona, that she's probably on red alert most of the time. I know she's battled reporters by playing back some of their questions to her because they've mischaracterized their own questions.
I think that's super smart.
So I think she's pretty savvy about that. Now, do I trust her? Well, if I'm a person who, I might have said some embarrassing things. You got to live with embarrassing things. But if you're worried that she might record some of my illegal conversations, that's on me. That's not on her. So I wouldn't be worried about somebody recording me. I just need to know. I just need to be responsible for my own words. If I'm going to say something bad about you, George, and I don't want you to hear it, well, if it comes out, I own it. But I can't be saying I want to. And being embarrassed is a lot different than doing something illegal. So
that is correct. That's true, man. And
I'm not worried about Carrie Lake recording somebody because of her history. It could, maybe this guy, Jeff DeWitt, maybe he's been sexually harassing her for years, and maybe she's always.
We'd know that. We'd know that. That would have come out already.
I don't know, but I don't know. Do we?
If Jeff's right, and again, you have to take it with a grain of salt because here's a dude that got caught with his hand in the cookie jar and was forced to resign. You can decide what the reasons were for that. But when this guy says she has a habit,
I don't know if he was forced to resign. He resigned, so he obviously thought he did something wrong, or he wouldn't have resigned.
No doubt. But remember the reasoning that he gives, and maybe she'll come out. Maybe in this Rumble thing that Craig told us about, she reveals whether that's true or not. But this guy says, "Hey, man." Her campaign people reached out to me and said, there's a lot more where that came from. You can go or you can listen to it on social media and everywhere else. That's what he says. Now, you decide whether you believe it or not. But if that's true, if she records people all the time, and even Craig said that and then demanded to know how I knew it happened. But if that's true, my thought would be if you were going to talk with her, if you had a friend in your life, and they're not besties, I'm not suggesting that, but someone that you trusted, you worked with, maybe you thought you were politically and professionally aligned, and you had a bunch of conversations with them that you thought it was just the two of you, or even three or four of you, you're just different when you talk than if you're like, this is being recorded and it could ultimately be used in social media. You would be very different, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
If that is true, and you're a U.S. senator from another state, a Republican from another state, and she gets elected, how do you trust that she's not recording every conversation she has with you in the office?
I wouldn't know, but
you wouldn't know, but wouldn't you presume now? Wouldn't you presume?
Well, I would hope I would have some integrity not to say anything that's going to be illegal.
Yeah, the illegal part I get, but what if it's something else? What if it's talking about
embarrassing compromise, or I don't like this?
Yeah, but the embarrassing thing could be what you mentioned before. You guys are sitting around and, you're a senator who says something like, look, this bill by Ted Cruz, Ted's just a moron. He doesn't understand this area, blah, 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 blah.
That president is so old.
Or something like that, right? Like, if you thought I don't even have the ability to express these kinds of comments and stuff like this in private, aren't you completely different with that other person? And the reason that's important is if you are so guarded around that person who's a member of your caucus, doesn't it diminish their effectiveness in office if nobody trusts to have a conversation with her because they don't know when it's going to be used against them? My God, she held on to this one for 10 months.
Yeah, she released it, or they released. Who released this anyway?
I don't know, but we know she made it and had possession of it. So I
know.
find it a little
Yeah,
hard
do
to
we know-
believe that someone did it without her knowledge and permission.
Well, you never know. The sting, the FBI. Who knows? This could have been Jeff. Could have been recording it too. Set Carrie up to set her to get a sting on her, use her later on down the road to be able to be controlled. So I don't know who's recording who. I guess she did. I don't know who released it. Obviously, she recorded it.
You got to believe
but
if he had the recording, he'd release it now, John, because he had said, hey, it was very selective and edited. And it's like, okay, well, the proof of that is if you play the whole thing. And so if he had it, I think he'd have played it. But you raise another question. Are we in the new norm, John? Is this the new norm for politics where you have to presume that every person who isn't you is out there recording your conversations that you think are private for some future political gain? I mean, wouldn't that just dramatically change politics?
Well, maybe it'd change it for the better if people were honest.
It might, and I appreciate that take on it, but it might also keep us from knowing people's true motivations, because once this thing gets revealed, once it happens one more time, all of a sudden everybody holds back the inside voice, right? They never let it out. They don't say the things out loud. But I think it diminishes the effectiveness, not even in politics, man, but if you had to work with and trust to get certain things done, if you thought the things that you said in that trust tree were going to be broadcast and potentially used against you, that trust tree becomes a trust twig. And there's nothing. I mean, it diminishes the efficiency. I mean, imagine in a military unit, and I'm not talking tactics or stupid secret stuff, but just the stuff that soldiers talk about. If you thought that a soldier was recording you and was able to send that up the chain of command, it would dramatically reduce the trust and efficiency of those units. That's true with business, and my guess is it's true with politics. It's a worrying trend.
Oh, completely. In a esprit de corps of a unit, you bet. If soldiers couldn't be, talk to each other, but I think they'd end up sorting that out. Somebody else's not trust, I think that gets sorted out pretty quickly.
Well, listen, this is a great conversation, John. I appreciate your perspective, and I agree with you. Thanks for the call, John. I appreciate the extra information that she had received some call from this dude, Jeff DeWitt, who had said, hey, I want to talk to you about something I can't say over the phone. That would get me thinking, what the hell can't you say over the phone? I mean, unless you were working for the mob, who's listening in? Maybe China, but you know what I mean. I think that would change it a little bit. But this revelation that she records people all the time, dang, man, couldn't this change politics? The new Kari Lake rule where you can't trust anybody, even your coworkers, your friends, your political allies, because you worry about what they're going to use the recording for. I think it could change everything. What do you think? 303-696-1971. We've got a bunch of other callers on the line here, including Joan and Ralph, and I think maybe John's line is open. You can fill that. We'll try to get to the text here, but I got to cut away for a break, not until I tell you about Joyce and Brent Tolliver. That's the mom and son dynamic duo that does the stuff that you can't see. People coming over to your house, they're not going to get to see the magic that exists in your cabinetry because it's stuck there behind those great cabinet doors. Brett and Joyce come over. They look at your current cabinet situation, whether it's in your kitchen, your bathroom, your laundry room, wherever, garage too. I guess people have cabinets in their garage. And they say, here's what we can do to make this efficient. We can have these roll them out shelves that will allow you to have access to things way back in the crevices that otherwise you'd forget about, or you'd have to crawl around on your hands and knees to get that lower back strain. Get rid of all that stuff. Call up Brent and Joyce Tolliver. It is a completely free in-home estimate. They came out to my house and did it. It was fantastic. 303-475-9601, 303-475-9601, or you can go to rollemoutshelves.com. That's rollemoutshelves.com. Joan, Ralph, everybody else calling in, stick around. We'll get to you. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. If you're experiencing chronic pain in your shoulders, your knees, your elbows, whatever those joints are, remember you have an option, right? Of the regular things that your mind can think of, you may not be thinking of regenerative medicine, but if you do think of regenerative medicine, and you should, our friends at QC Kinetics are the folks that make it all so possible and at such a reasonable price. In fact, I told you that we had friends of ours that did the regenerative medicine thing on her knee, on mom, the wife's knee. And it saved them tens of thousands of dollars of expenses. Because they didn't have to do the surgery and the rehab and all the other stuff that comes along with invasive, cut you open and fix you kinds of surgery. Find out if you're eligible. Call them at 303-900-8986. All local medical professionals, 303-900-8986. Those are our friends at QCkinetics.com, QCkinetics.com. Walk in, walk out, start healing because of you. Regenerative medicine, QC Kinetics. Those words are almost synonymous. Let's get back to the phone lines. Joan, you're on 710 KNUS. Joan, what do you think?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I have been sitting here going, well, I don't know what the rules are in Arizona, but I do know in Colorado that one person can record a conversation legally.
Yep, it's the same in Arizona, Joan. We talked about it yesterday. It's a one-party consent state, so you're right about that. So it's not illegal what Kari Lake did.
So then it comes to interpretation. And I had a friend of mine this morning send me this little blurb that she saw on the internet. And it said, Colorado House GOP leader resigns post after trying to hide DUI and gun charges. And she thought that this was the same person who was running the GOP chair here in Colorado as in Arizona, and actually was very confused about it. And I was confused because I hadn't heard that Mike Lynch had resigned. And so I went and looked it up. And he didn't resign from the Senate, did he?
Well, he's not in the Senate. He's in the House. He didn't resign his House seat. He resigned his leadership position.
Right. So he didn't resign his House seat. He resigned his leadership position.
Correct.
And that I saw that he'd done. But if you read what happened here and how they did it, it confused her. It confused me. And the thing that gets confusing to me is when you say, and Jeff has the same position that Dave Williams has. And it's just not a necessary qualification.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about how you've been saying all morning that the position that Jeff I can't say his last name.
DeWitt.
DeWitt. Okay. I'm sorry. Jeff DeWitt resigned from is the same position that Dave Williams holds.
But that's absolutely true. That helps folks understand who this guy is.
But it's not. It's true, but it's not a necessary qualification.
Well, it's not a qualification. It's a description so that people listening can appreciate. Because we have Dave on the show all the time. We talk about Dave all the time. It's so that they can understand, I get who this guy is in the party.
Okay. Well, according to this little article I just read you, they think that Mike Lynch is the party person.
No, because the title you read is 100% accurate. Read it again. What does it say?
Colorado House GOP leader.
That's all true. Mike Lynch was the Colorado House GOP leader. There's no confusion about that. That is,
Post.
That's true.
After trying to hide.
Joan,
DUI.
Everything you've read is 100% accurate. There's nothing about it that suggests or conflates it with Dave Williams at all. Mike Lynch was the Colorado GOP House leader. That is true.
Yes, but if you don't understand then you might think it was Dave Williams. And it's the same thing that you're doing with saying that DeWitt
Hold on. I don't know anybody on the planet Earth. I don't know anybody on the planet Earth before your call that thought that that was a description of Dave Williams.
I just find it interesting you had to keep saying it over and over again.
I don't know about keep saying it over and over again, but in terms of setting the stage for the story, I want people to appreciate that this would be the same position, the same powerful position at the state that Dave has. It's not an attempt to say Dave would do this. I don't think Dave would do this. I'm just saying, hey, everybody, this guy is the Dave Williams for Arizona.
Okay. And it's like saying, can you trust Carrie Williams now because she records things?
It's Lake. It's Carrie Lake. Unless she married Dave for a second.
I'm sorry. I did say.
But when I asked that question, it's true, but not just for Carrie Lake, but anybody that would surreptitiously record your conversations that you thought were private with them. Wouldn't that affect the level of trust you have for them?
It already affects the level of trust. My insurance agent calls, and I am very careful about what I say. Somebody calls that I don't know. I'm very careful about what I say because I know that I am being recorded.
Yeah, but then there are strangers. You don't know them. This is like a coworker, a colleague, a friend.
Well, the other day I had a friend who said he wanted to talk to me off the record and have a drink and that kind of thing. And it's one of those things that sets up a real red flag. And quite
Joan,
frankly,
did they try to talk you out of running for Senate?
No, not for Senate. And someday you can buy me a drink at the Douglas County Lincoln Day party, and I'll
Lincoln
tell
Day
you.
dinner. That's coming up too.
Yeah.
I think Colonel West is actually I think he's the speaker for that, so that should be pretty cool.
Yeah,
but tell me your thoughts again on this. Would you trust someone who was a friend, right? Or a coworker, or someone that you just treat differently than an insurance agent or a stranger who calls, or someone who reaches out to you out of the blue? Someone in your trust tree, right? If you all of a sudden knew that they were recording every conversation, and that those conversations might be revealed in a way that, is pretty damning for you, would you trust them the same way?
That's a good question, because I actually had somebody this past week who did something to me, and I was like, well, that's it. I can't trust you anymore. And it was the third time that she had done something that I just was like, you've crossed the line. And so she sent me a very lovely email saying, sorry. And I sent a message back that said, very pretty email, poor form. And you were talking to that other man about being in the military and trusting each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he said they would get it sorted out pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that probably she got a vibe from this man, and she was working on sorting it out. And apparently she talked about it last March, and it just didn't get sorted out.
Just interesting. Joan, I appreciate the phone call. Thank you for that. Let me know. It doesn't have to be over a drink, whether you were talked out of running for the Senate or some other race. Joan's line is open at 303-696-1971. Ralph from the Springs, you're on 710 KNUS. Ralph, what do you think?
First, well, two things. First, thank you very much for a blast from the past. D.D. Mao.
It just happened. I wasn't trying to refer back to another day, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, no, but the thing is that it's really incredible that something that was so tied in Vietnam suddenly is part of your conversation. So
Yeah,
yes,
right.
okay. Thank you very much for that. And I guess I'll use that as a segue. Long ago and far away, I had the highest SIGINT comment and ELINT clearances in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Let's just leave it at that. But fundamentally, ever since then, I have never said or never wanted to say anything electronically that I didn't expect to see come back at me.
Wow.
And I think No, think about it.
But do you have a different approach to the spoken word, Ralph? I mean, do you treat speaking to someone face to face differently than you do putting it in a text or an email?
Absolutely. But you see, if you are talking face to face, you got one thing you don't have if it's electronic, and that is their face. You got to read people. And fundamentally, I mean, I'm sorry, but this sounds like going back to the mafia days. Well, I'll put it this way. It goes back sort of also to the super mafia days, because I was a partner in a tax firm in Houston, and we would sweep our offices once a week electronically. It's just the fact that that's the way the world is. And anyone who expects that whatever they say on the telephone, email, what have you, isn't being recorded and can't come back to bite them on the ass is living in a fantasy world.
Okay, well, that's smart. That's smart. But doesn't this kind of eliminate that as a safe option? And do you treat this differently?
Oh, but the thing is, and you put your finger right on it with regard to what would happen in the military. I don't know if you're familiar with the phrase, but I was a democratic centralist type of leadership, which means that I let all my analysts have their say, and then I have my say, and it's sort of like Lincoln's cabinet. The vote is 5-1. I'm the one. This is what we're going to do. But
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, so the thing was that the North Vietnamese were doing the same thing. So anyway, but that's how you get the best opinions. And those conversations need to occur. Otherwise,
you're right, they do.
Otherwise, you're stuck with whatever is your best solution when somebody else may have a better one. That's what you need, is the best solution in military. Frankly, you also need it in politics. And now here's my other point, Rosemary Woods. Remember that taping your opponents or other people or even friends' conversations goes at least as far back as Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon. Any politician who assumes that they're not being taped on the phone, I use the word tape, but recorded, better word, on the phone, well, that explains why I'm not a politician, I think.
Well, Ralph, by the way, your timing on that revelation is ridiculously good, because I think I read that a couple days ago was the anniversary of the revelation by Alexander Butterfield, a retired, I think, Air Force colonel, who was the guy that installed that voice-activated recording system in Nixon's Oval Office at his request, by the way, for purposes of posterity and all that other stuff. I think that was just, I can't remember what year that was, but I think we just hit the anniversary of it. So your reference is fantastic. But wouldn't the difference be this? If you walked into the Oval Office, and there should be a place where the president can have candid conversations with people that will never come back to haunt him. I believe that, right? But you don't have the same expectation of privacy walking into a government paid for building with a government official that you would if you're sitting in someone's living room having a conversation, would you?
No. And that's the thing, that what Kerry Lake is doing is no better, no worse than what Lyndon Johnson did and Richard Nixon did. It's just that has gone from being abnormal and something that Nixon had to leave the White House for, to now becoming the new normal. I don't think it's a good idea, but go ahead.
I'm glad you brought up the Nixon thing. Nixon's exit from the office wasn't because he was recording conversations. It was because in those recorded conversations, he's trying to cover up the break-in of the Watergate. But I get your point. Yeah, that's the.
But also remember that he also tried to alter those tapes, which is again
well,
something that
he did. There's those missing seconds. However many seconds are missing from the tape?
17 minutes to be exact.
That's
I
right.
think it's 17 minutes. It's 17 or 19, but there were two erasures on that tape. So two people are at two different times, they erase something. But the thing is, George, we have to trust each other for this thing called the Constitution to work. And what you and I are seeing, and I admit that I'm a rhino, you can pick your own, but fundamentally where we're headed in both directions. And again, I go back to Lyndon Baines Johnson and Richard Milhouse Nixon. Both of our parties, in order to win, are becoming more and more willing to do whatever it takes.
Well, and now it's not even just parties; it's individual candidates. Hey Ralph.
Yes,
I love your mastery of the history and the fact that you talk so much from experience. Forgive me, I'm up against a break here, but please keep listening and calling. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
You're going to have to DD Mao out of this one. 303-696-1971. Ralph's line is open. I promise that Ron and everyone else, we're going to get to you after this break. I got to tell you about our friends at Empower Home Team of Keller Williams. Yep, that's Gay Ribble. They can assist you. They sell with certainty. That's their program, the Sell with Certainty program I've told you about so many times. It does away with all of those agonizing questions and tensions that come with selling a home. They guarantee the sale, your timing, your price, or they make up for the difference with money. That's a big deal. Call them at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD. But they have this great website called sellwithcertaintycolorado.com, sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. You can also check out their jillions of 5-star Google reviews. They've done it all in every kind of market, including this very challenging one. Gay just knows stuff, and she gets to use that for your benefit. Check them out at 833-301-SOLD. Just that number, 833-301-SOLD, or sellwithcertaintycolorado.com, sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. When we come back, your text, your calls, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Not a ton of time left, but enough to tell you that, listen, what goes on inside your mouth is your own business, but how to keep that mouth healthy, clean, something you want to use all the time when you show those pearly whites, well, that's Twin Aspen Dental Center's business right there. Here's one thing that they do in particular. If you've got missing teeth and you're just tired of that hassle, it makes you feel self-conscious, you don't like to show off your great smile, these folks at Twin Aspen Dental, Doctors Richter and Snyder, great people, great senses of humor too. They have this state-of-the-art cone beam x-ray machine that can look and see whether the bone in your jaw and all this other stuff is sufficient for the right kind of an implant or whatever they need to do to help make your great smile even greater. Eating, talking, smiling, you know they're all affected by missing teeth. Dental implants are the best solution to fix your missing teeth, and these folks know how to do it with the greatest state-of-the-art technology available. Give them a call at 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466, or check them out at twinaspendentalcenter.com. That's twinaspendentalcenter.com. Ron, you're on 710 KNUS. Ron, what do you think?
Hey, good morning. Hey, that caller you just now had, he was very interesting. I agree that when you're in politics, just always assume you're being recorded. Yeah. Now, what was it that you asked as far as if it was somebody that you just trusted?
Yeah, if it was like someone that you just took for granted they'd be recording you, a friend, a colleague, a coworker, something like that, and all of a sudden you discovered that they had been recording their private conversations with another coworker. Could you trust them? Would you treat them differently? Do you know what I mean? Like, wouldn't you be more guarded? Like, oh, Jesus, are they recording me?
Yeah, absolutely, which leads me to a question that you would be able to answer. If you ask them, is this being recorded? And if they say no, then doesn't that become illegal?
Great question, Ron. And it's one I'm going to answer after the top of the hour because you've talked us through to the end of this segment. Thank you so much, man. Hey, listen, stick around. We're going to answer that question and others and your text. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It's the final hour of the Thursday show. We'll be back again, of course, tomorrow from 6 to 10 a.m. G gets the morning off, and James has been subjected to this particular show. G, you've almost made it, man. Congratulations. It's almost like getting paroled. You can go back to sleeping normal hours. The question that Ron posed was related to this Kari Lake incident, where it sounds like Kari Lake records everybody all the time. And that showed up to the detriment for Jeff DeWitt, who was the state party chair. And for Joan out there, that's the same position that Dave Williams holds out here in Colorado. And he appears to have met with her in what he believed to be the trust tree and engaged in attempting to, I guess, bribe is the only way I can think of this, to buy her off of running for the Senate by referencing some moneyed people out on the East Coast. Now, that part of the story has been talked about a lot. I don't think it's excusable. I don't think it's the kind of conversation anybody in his official position can engage in. I mean, listen, if it was her buddy who was just like the neighbor and he's like, hey, some guys contacted me, and so that'd be one thing. But when you're the state party chair and you engage in that conversation, even with a friend and a coworker or an employee, if that's what she was, you're just signing up for problems, man. That's not an appropriate conversation to have, even in private, if you hold that position. It may not be an appropriate conversation to have depending upon what the law in your state is. Like, you can't do that in Colorado. You couldn't try to bribe someone into not running for an office. Couple things real quick. No, she's not a victim. Come on, man. Kari Lake's the victim of nobody, but certainly not in this circumstance. Doesn't make what this guy did any more right. It was wrong, and he mealy-mouthed that apology piece in his letter when he said, I regret some of the things I said. Well, like what? What do you regret? The bribe part? The trying to get her to not run part? It was all inappropriate. That was weak. But the bigger question was about the recording. So Ron calls in, and I didn't get a chance to talk with Ron as much as I would have liked to if we hadn't been up against the end of the hour. But Ron says, listen, if you ask someone, hey, are you recording me? And they say no, and they do it anyway, are they in trouble? And the answer is no, they are not. Now, I know that even for cops, there's this weird mythology, street mythology out there that if someone's like an undercover officer and they ask you, you have to tell them that you are. I don't know where they got that idea or anything like that. If they ask you if you're a police officer and you're undercover, I presume the police officer will lie to you and say, dude, that's a crazy question. No, of course not. There's nothing illegal about that. There's nothing. It's not like it's the Wonder Woman's golden lasso of truth if I just ask the right question. So to answer Ron's from the last hour, no, Ron, Kari Lake could be recording you. And if you say, hey, are you recording me? She could say, no, that's a crazy thought. Of course, I wouldn't do that. Because your consent, your knowledge of the conversation is wholly irrelevant. Absolutely irrelevant. In a one-party consent state, that one party could be the person recording you. They just have to be known to you, right? Like, it couldn't be that you two think you're having a private conversation in a coffee shop and someone is using some sound device, enhancing device, a listening device, if you will, from across the thing. They couldn't do that. The expectation of privacy, although diminished from what you'd have in your living room, still exists. And you can't do something like that. They couldn't eavesdrop on a phone call. See, it's the party that consents that makes it okay has to be a known party to the conversation. And you can't know if someone's doing it through electronic means and all that other stuff. So that's the answer to that. Lots of texts coming in here about this. And I told you I wanted to get to these things, and it's not fair to tell you that and then not do it. So let me read through some of these, no particular order. Not exactly the same, but as a Michael Cohen comparison, has a Michael Cohen comparison happened yet regarding the act of recording? I have not heard that, and you're right, it's not the same, but that is fascinating. Now, there are some limitations, and our friend Corey from Parker pointed this out. There are some limitations to what a licensed attorney in Colorado can do. Like, you can't surreptitiously record folks if you're an attorney, which is a weird rule to have, because if I'm in my normal not attorney job, why do I get to be treated differently than everybody else? But there it is. So you have that. The other piece of this is now, and if you go out and look on the internet, it's there, folks. There are increasing questions about, did she record Donald Trump without his knowledge? He's got to be wondering that too. In fact, if you've ever had contact with Kari Lake as a candidate, you must now wonder, Jesus, did she record me? Good grief. What did I tell her when I thought it was in private? I mean, I just don't get how she can move forward with people and have the same level of trust from them. I completely understand the idea that, hey, this guy that called up Jeff DeWitt said, hey, I want to come over and talk to you about something I can't say over the phone. Yep, that would make me wonder too. But it sounds like the narrative here is she records a lot of private conversations. You know what would be even better, and I think more ethical, is if she were to just wear a body cam. If she wore a body cam, because you know when you interact with police, don't you think that body cam is on all the time? And it's not. But don't you think it's on all the time? Don't you think, my God, they're recording me right now? And it just changes the way you interact with them. And there's good and there's bad to that, mostly good. But wouldn't you do that if Kari Lake wore a sign or a T-shirt or something that said, almost like you get at 7-Eleven, you know, with the little, you could be monitored, you're being monitored. Now, they do that to ward off criminal conduct, but it could be the kind of knowledge that you would need so you'd be different with her. I just wonder if she pulls this thing off, and she sure could in Arizona in 2024. If you're a U.S. senator, how do you deal with that, man? How do you work with her, have any private conversation without worrying? And is she now going to have to be in the business of telling people, and she's not obligated to tell them the truth? Don't worry, I'm not recording this conversation. Is that going to be the new mantra, the new introduction? Hi, I'm Kari Lake, and I'm not recording this conversation. I mean, it's so bizarre, the bar that has been set now from this. If it's a one-off, if it's, I only recorded this one conversation, I don't do this to anyone else, then I feel completely differently about it, right? I do wonder why she waited 10 months to release it, but I feel completely differently about it. However, if, as is suggested by DeWitt, and you can trust him or not, I don't care, his statement was, I resigned in part because her campaign told me, we got tons of these, man, and that ain't the worst one. So unless you want to be humiliated, embarrassed, or worse, then you need to resign. Well, he took that threat seriously. Tells me that they must have had some pretty candid conversations about stuff. So it sounds like, though, she does this as a matter of course. I don't know. I don't know what you do with that. Another text, maybe Kari Lake doesn't record anybody, but she felt there was a trust issue with this guy and she felt the need to do so. Yeah, that could be. You're right. That could be, Texter, that it was just about this guy. But I'm not the only one to suggest that maybe she recorded DJT or some others. What would you think about Kari Lake in that situation, folks? What would you think about a Kari Lake who released an audio recording of a conversation she recorded with just her and Donald Trump, where he says some things that are just bad, actionable or otherwise? Would you look at Kari Lake as a hero, or heading into 2024, especially if it sunk his battleship, his campaign? Would you look at her as a hero or a zero? If you're being consistent, if what she did here was the right thing to do and you champion her, would it be the right thing for her to do it if it came from Trump? Let's just pretend for a moment she has recorded Trump saying, Kari, I don't want you to run for the U.S. Senate. I think we stand a better chance with someone else. I'd really like you to not run for the Senate. I would prefer that you run for governor. And if you can agree to do that, my folks will take care of you over the next couple of years. And she releases that recording. Do you cheer her on and say, aha, thank God, you've revealed the corruption of Donald Trump? Or do you sit there and think, why, that ridiculously untrustworthy hack? I mean, if politics drives your answer on this, then it's not a position that you take out of principle. It's a position you take out of politics. That's different. If the principle is, I'm appalled at the complete lack of trust that takes place with anybody who records every conversation and then uses it 10 months later for political gain. That's a principle, but you'd have to apply it in the other situations too, if she got someone that you liked. Another text, Kari Lake, the honey rat. You can only trust her if she gets searched, like she's at the Buell Theater. Another text, I agree with Ralph. Ever since Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, I don't do anything negative that can come back on me ever. I'm very careful what I say on the internet and on my phone. The internet has made me leery, although it did default to Larry, but the internet has made me leery. I should be more cautious than that. I mean, I do send a lot of things in email. I try to be guarded in some of that stuff because you never knew who's going to forward it or screenshot it or whatever. But you're right, man. Electronically, we probably don't know yet. I mean, are we entering a post-privacy era that we've done to ourselves? Maybe the answer is maybe this is the future, right? We're talking about all the, the Google optics and the Apple optics and all this virtual reality stuff. Well, all that's electronic, folks. All that's capable of being recorded. Maybe the next wave of innovation, the next consumer product ought to be your own personal body cam. It would affect the way we interact with each other in ways that I don't even think we can predict. There's some good ones. I mean, listen, if you had the ability to have your own body cam at all times or to turn it on at all times, imagine how people that seek to hurt you or abuse you might change their behavior if they believe they were being recorded. Imagine that if you had your own personal body cam, that would be a huge plus, right? We would have to be better behaved around each other. But the downside would be if it was on all the time and you knew that or believed that, you would just change the way you interacted with society. Because you know that at any moment somebody can go, remember that thing you did 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago? I mean, look at how many people get canceled for things they posted on freaking social media 6, 7, 8 years ago. And they're still getting canceled for it. Careers ended over stuff they posted sometimes when they were a teenager. People being shown the door from these elite schools or other jobs. Imagine now if you had someone in your life that was recording all of your conversations that you didn't know about, and then it was revealed to you. What do you do? This is fascinating. Here's our friend Alexa. How many people do you think were recorded by Epstein? Great question. When they visited his home, ranch, or island, how many politicians, elites, etc., are being blackmailed for having sex with underage kids? What a great question. I don't know. And I don't want to play conspiracy theorist here, but if you're the government and you obtain all those recordings of people in power, do you use them as the source of a prosecution, which is what they should be used for if they fit, or do you hang on to them for use for some other political blackmail? That's a fascinating question. I think people should assume they are being recorded. When I grew up, I was told never put something in writing that you don't want your grandmother to read on the front page of the newspaper. This is kind of a different iteration of this. This is don't say anything out loud ever to anyone that you don't want on the front page of YouTube or Twitter or Facebook. I think that applies to much of our lives. Video cameras are everywhere. How many bad cops or athletes would not have been caught without videos? That is very true. That was sort of the movement behind us getting into, what was that, SB 271, but there were other aspects that were the body cam ones. Some were recorded by bystanders. Others were recorded by street, hotel, elevator cameras, or business cameras. Also tell you, we saw a lot of crimes with video too, so that's not a downside. Another one here, quid pro quo happens all the time in political campaigns. Candidates are offered private company jobs and political positions all too often if they agree to drop out of a race, and it's completely legal. First off, why don't I get that? Maybe I just need to announce I'm running for more offices to see who will offer me an additional job. Folks, I'm thinking about running for CD 4, 8, 5, and 3. Let the job offers come. This is the new monster.com for politicians. Announce I'm thinking about running for an office and wait for someone to come and hire you away from that. If that happens all the time, I'm certainly unaware of it, but they give an example. In 2013, Obama agreed to retire Hillary's campaign debt if she dropped out and endorsed him. Man, that feels like a bribe, doesn't it? Doesn't that feel like a bribe? If I had more time, and maybe I'll do it today, I'll look up. I'm almost positive there is a Colorado law that criminalizes an attempt to bribe someone out of running for office, but I could be wrong. Listen, I did look up that Arizona law, true to my word, that was about extortion, because I thought, when Craig called up from the road in his truck, and I appreciate him listening and calling, it'd be super cool if he got something called a Bluetooth microphone or AirPods or something, because it would improve the quality of the call. But I looked up theft by extortion. This may not be the only statute out there, but there is theft by extortion in Arizona, and this is what it says. A person commits theft by extortion by knowingly obtaining or seeking to obtain property or services by means of a threat to do in the future any of the following. Well, first off, that can't apply here because Kari Lake, at least according to Jeff DeWitt, didn't seek to obtain property or services. It's kind of the opposite of that. It's I want you to stop serving as the state party chair, but it's instructive as to what extortion could be. By means of a threat to do in the future any of the following. 1, cause physical injury. Well, that's not true here. 2, cause physical injury to anyone. That's not true here. Cause damage to property. Not true here. Engage in other conduct constituting an offense. I don't think that's true. Accuse anyone of a crime or bring criminal charges against anyone. I don't see that as true here. Expose a secret or an asserted fact in social media message as defined in blank or in any other manner, whether true or false, tending to subject anyone to hatred, contempt, or ridicule, or to impair the person's credit or business unless the threat is based on a plausible claim of right to the property or services, blah, blah, blah. That's the only one so far that looks like it could touch upon it. Take or withhold action as a public servant. Well, they're not really a public servant if they're the state party chair. Or to take or withhold action, cause anyone to part with any property. I suppose you could make the argument that the position as state party chair, if it's a compensated position, is property. You could argue that and then say that, hey, this was extortion because it was a threat to take or withhold or to cause anyone to part with any property. That could be it. There's another take or withhold action regarding an alleged claim of easement. No, don't care about that. Claimant's property interest is the result of a tax lien. Don't care about that. Fair market value. Don't care. It is a defense to a prosecution under this if a reasonable person would believe that the property or services were obtained or sought to be obtained by the threat of a reasonable accusation. Blah, 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 blah. Yep, it's a class 4 felony in Arizona. This one doesn't fit. I'm going to keep looking to see if there's some other extortion or like we don't have a blackmail per se kind of charge that I can find here, but I'll take a look at that. 303-696-1971 is the number. I'm checking right now to see if G has talked to us about any of that stuff. Here's another one. Forgive me. I'm more shocked that people are shocked that people, politicians, celebrities record conversations, or that politicians on both sides use bribery, deal-making, and or threats to get what they want. Hello, world. Celebrities record their interviews all the time to protect themselves against being taken out of context. And that's a great text. We talked about that, I think, in the 7 o'clock hour. That's true, but this is different. This is different. When those conversations are being recorded, they're usually known by everyone, right? This is just different than that. And I don't think it's a crime. I don't think it ought to be criminalized. But does this change? I mean, listen, if you're in that circus called the 2024 General Assembly under the Gold Dome, and you've got bomb throwers in there, some of them are human bombs themselves, whether it's Robert Marshall, Crazy Bob out there in Highlands Ranch, who is enjoying the last session he'll serve in the legislature, or Elizabeth Epps, or Hamas celebrating Timmy Hernandez. I mean, if you've got these people in your caucus, aren't you freaked out that they're recording your conversations, especially Epps and Marshall, right? Like Epps goes to social media all day, every day, doing two things. One, defending Hamas and calling for the end of war because Israel doesn't matter. But the other thing she does is to call out her leadership. And by that, I mean the leadership of the Democrat caucus in the House. I think she's on her last term as well. And I say that only because I believe that she's being primaried pretty aggressively and well-funded because they'd love to get rid of this human hand grenade who has a tendency to pull her own pin, especially over issues of Jews and Israel and Hamas and all that stuff. But imagine if this doesn't give her the idea, if she hadn't had it already, to just record every conversation that she has with someone in leadership for future use. You don't even have to use it right away. Just threaten to release something. That's crazy. That's crazy that that's where politics is going. Is that good? Is that transparency? I don't know. It seems to me that it stifles conversations that are candid, meaningful, that are necessary to try to get some things done. And in your own private life, my God, if you knew your friend was recording another friend's do you then go, well, that would only apply to them. It would only apply to Jeff DeWitt. She would never do that to me. I'm the deputy state party chair, or I'm just her neighbor. I mean, do you think like that? Like, dang, it just changes things so much. Here's one that says, you see Kari as a trust issue. I see it as an integrity issue. Well, tell me about that, texter, in a good way or bad way. It says Kari's code of honor is do what's right. We need her in the Senate. Okay, I get your position now. So do you think it was an act of integrity to record Jeff DeWitt in this situation? I could say yes, given how he foreshadowed what was coming. I can't talk to you about it on the phone, all this other stuff. Yeah, okay. But how about every other recording? How about the idea that she's threatening to release other recordings? Would that be an act of integrity to get someone to resign? I mean, if you're Machiavelli, if you're Niccolo Machiavelli, of course, the ends justify the means. The ends are get this guy out of the leadership role. The means doesn't matter. But if she has other recordings, it seems to me if she's doing what's right, if that's really her mantra, she releases them all. Why not? If she has them and they're damning of the state party chair, why not release them? Because that's what integrity would call for. But this seems a lot more like political opportunism. 303-696-1971. I thought you couldn't record someone without their consent. Nope, that's not true in Colorado and not true in Arizona. One more step closer. Here's one. Has one more step closer to idiocracy, reality TV politics. You know what? You nailed it, man. That's what I think we're going to. What if in fact, I would like this. What if everybody in the Senate and the House, in the General Assembly, had to wear body cams the way that cops do? Do you know what I mean? Why not force them, especially when interacting with members of the public, they have to wear body cams? Interesting. I wonder if they would do that. And if not, why not? We're moving to a body cam world. In fact, I wish I had thought of that when I was the elected DA. I wonder if you could do at least body cam for a day. Every time I interact with the public, I would flip on the body cam. That's fascinating. That could be where this thing goes. I don't know. 303-696-1971. How many politicians and other execs secretly record conversations? We might be shocked to find out. I agree. I do think we'd be shocked to find out. We wouldn't be shocked to find out, by the way, that Ultra Botanica, the patent holders and creators of UltraCure, have come up with a way to improve your health and your life without any surgical or medical intervention, just through a supplement, all natural. It's curcumin based. And if you haven't researched curcumin, and I hadn't before I started looking into this, do it. You can go to getultranow.com, getultranow.com. Definitely go there. They provide a bunch of information. But if you're like, what does other people say? What do other people say about curcumin that aren't trying to get me to try their product? Go check it out. You're going to be blown away by what this stuff does. Well, they've got this patented thing. They've kind of like put curcumin on accelerate or steroids, but it's not steroids. You can get a free 3-day sample by going to your natural grocers, ask the vitamin manager, and you have to ask the vitamin manager for your 3-day sample. Try it. You'll experience what Billy and I did. And then Billy's results are different than mine. For me, it was a feeling of increased health, but where I noticed it the most was after a run, the pain that I felt, it went away more quickly. I just didn't have the same aches and the pains when I was taking it. You should try it too. GetUltraNow.com. Go to your natural grocers, vitamin manager, free 3-day sample, and start enjoying life again. Listen, we've got a bunch more text to get through. 303-696-1971 is the number. Let's do this. Let's cut away for a break. When we come back, I'll continue to answer these texts. Keep it going. I'll tell you about some other updates on some things as well. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes, all in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll 'em Out Shelves, your clutter transformation experts, create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll 'em Out Shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly to clear the clutter. Contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll 'em Out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Listen, Geronimo's no longer behind the glass, been replaced by Kelly. And in large part, that happened because I demanded that they put somebody with his own natural hair behind the glass. No, it's no offense to Geronimo. He's not listening anymore anyway. But let me tell you, if you've ever run into a situation where you're like, it seems like they're picking the guy with hair over me. You look in the mirror, you say, where did that young guy go? He's still trapped in there, but without this hair, I just look like I'm aging. I don't look as confident. Whatever the reason, call our friend Dr. Tanya Pauls at Advanced Hair Restoration. Now, you can find the website, an easy to find, advancedhair.com. You can find all the studies that they've done, all the wonderful treatment, all the customer feedback that they've had. But here's the big thing, man. You can set up an appointment where you can go in, you get your free consultation. You call them at 720-459-HAIR. When you go in to do this treatment, they use your hair to help your hair grow. It starts growing the very next day. So many dudes have done this. You just don't know them. You just have probably seen them a few years later and like, man, why does that guy look that good? No, it's not the weight loss or the lifting and all that other stuff. No, it's because they went through Advanced Hair, and you should too. And if you do today, $250 off plus 250 free hair grafts. You don't have to have the procedures today. No, you just call them at 720-459-HAIR, 720-459-HAIR. Hair. It's advancedhair.com. I think I was running my fingers through my hair, which, by the way, is all natural. It's just also all gray. Hey, Doc, you're on 710 KNUS. Doc from Highlands Ranch. What do you think?
Well, I have concern that I'm a little bit disturbed. And I'm going to tell you why. They flew us 17 and a half hours over to Southeast Asia. Yes? And
say that again?
Vietnam.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. And paradoxically enough, we were also running Laos and Cambodia. Among those individuals who leadership in the both Marine Corps and Army, we were classified. Holy cow! I got to span risk. That having been said, you pray that you can prosecute a war and bring our guys, our subordinates, back home alive to their families, to their wives, and
yeah. Doc, help me tie this into the conversation. Help me understand how it fits into the conversation about the recording of people in private settings.
In that regard, I don't give a hang. They can record me from here to hell and gone. Dare I say, I am all right. I'm
at a loss for words.
Well, I'm going to be hell's bells. I'll be 77 in May, and I am trying to figure out how I can. I'm still on call with 3 different services.
Wow.
Army, Marine Corps, and Air Force.
Yeah.
And then I asked my date of birth. And they said, God bless you, sir. Carry on.
Yeah.
So that having been said, here I am in Colorado, trying to figure out how the Sam Hill I can get to a red state that's halfway decent. Because I'll tell you what, I am flatly my kids, my grandkids, dare I say, what in the Sam Hill are they going to inherit, George? Golly,
Doc, I don't know. It's a good question, and thank you for posing it on the show here. Doc's line is open at 303-696-1971. It's a fair question, but it's not the one that we're addressing right now. There's a lot of things we can do to improve Colorado, but is recording one of them? I mean, sort of the off-air conversation, the sausage gets made this way with Kelly was one, how do you have such natural, luxurious hair and keep it so perfectly cut? And his answer was Floby, which I thought was awesome. But the other part we talked about was, is this okay? Is this the new norm? Do we need to have laws now put in place to protect us, or at least some private places that we can have conversations? And what I mean by that is, if you've ever heard of the term Faraday bag or Faraday box, you know that these are things that, especially for investigators of crimes, because so many phones can access the internet, even when they're purportedly turned off, and information can be manipulated or deleted. A Faraday bag or a Faraday box, or whatever you want to call it, blocks the signals both in and out. So investigators will grab up, and on the battlefield, and frankly off the streets and at crime scenes, they'll grab up these cell phones, these other devices that connect wirelessly, and they'll throw them into these bags and protect them so that they can get them into an environment where they cannot be manipulated outside of being able to get the information off of them if you have actual physical contact with them. So the question is, do we need to have like Faraday zones? Do we need to have a law in place that would say, if an employer says this right here, and I got to put everybody on notice, this is a place where there are no cell phones, no recording devices, and all this. And if you violate that, I don't know if it's a crime, but if you violate that, and the only way you'd know is if that thing was ever used to blackmail someone, or if it surfaced on social media to shame, embarrass, or destroy someone, that it was an automatic lawsuit eligibility kind of a thing. You'd have a cause of action, and you'd be in per se violation, like by per se or de facto or whatever you want to call it. There's no real bar to prove that you intended, that you knew, none of that stuff. If they can prove that you were in the room and you were the source of the recording, by God, you can be sued, and there are automatic damages. If you could do that, is it something we should pursue? Should we need now laws? Do we need laws that will provide protection for private conversations? Because I think this is only going to grow. I think more and more people are going to move to recording everybody all the time. And on the one hand, I like the idea of a body cam for victims or would-be victims of crime, so that in times of, I don't know, danger or something else, they have the ability to activate it. I think it would change relationships potentially with domestic violence abusers. But short of that, I don't know. Is this a good thing? 303-696-1971. Here's our friend Eric Manning. George, are you out of your mind? I think that's rhetorical. For God's sake, Senator Chuck Schumer was accused of threatening Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch. Where's his questioning what he said and did? That's a fact. Carrie Lake didn't threaten anyone. He for sure did. Woo, as you say. Woo? Again, Eric, I think I understand where you're trying to go with this. It's the whataboutism that plagues politics these days. It's not helpful here. It's fair to ask, is what Chuck Schumer did a threat? Yes, of course. I think it was absolutely a threat. You're going to reap the whirlwind or whatever crazy stuff he said out there. Yeah, of course it was a threat, and it ought to be treated that way. But you can't deny that the information that's out there, at least right now by DeWitt, and you can decide whether you trust him or not, believe him or not, is that he was contacted by Carrie Lake's peeps, and they said, you can resign or we're going to release the rest of these audio recordings. I'd be fascinated to know if that call didn't come before this one got released. And he was like, yeah, you don't have anything. And they released this one. And then it was like, whoa, okay, I'm out. Peace out. I'm done. Here's one. She didn't make him say what he said. Of course, she knew it was being recorded. So what? The topic is bribery. They are not talking about the weather. That's part of the conversation. Yeah, the topic is bribery, trying to pay her out of running. But that's not the conversation today. The conversation is, do you trust her moving forward? Would you trust anyone who would record all of your private conversations without your knowledge, and that some later date, 10 months later, a year later, 10 years later, they get used against you? I mean, here's something you and I never had to deal with. And that was the idea that the stupid stuff we did as a kid, the stupid stuff we said as a kid, and I'm going to define a kid as anybody under the age of 30, the stupid things we did and said, it would be very hard for those to come back and haunt us because it was all pre-iPhone and pre-recording everything and internet stuff and all that. Well, this generation, my kids, they have to live in an environment where the things that they think are funny at age 12 that they put out on a YouTube could come back to haunt them when they apply for college at age 17 or 18. They have to deal with the stupid things that teenagers go through when they go through that Romeo and Juliet phase, and they trust the other person and they send them images. My God, nobody should ever be sending to anyone at that age, maybe not even any other, but at least with consenting adults, there's something. And they could be haunted by that. I mean, we never had to deal with that. But I think we're now entering a different era. And that era is you're being recorded all the time. Even in places where you think that there's trust and privacy. Is that a good thing? And do we need laws that protect businesses from doing that? Now, when it comes to the operations of government, I mean, outside of top secret stuff and secret squirrel stuff, yeah, I would not want to see, let's say, a school board meeting where they post a sign that says recordings aren't allowed. Well, screw you. Of course, recording should be allowed. When you're operating on the public dime in front of the public about things, I think we should record everything all the time. But in private conversations, I don't know. Do we need a Faraday law? 303-696-1971. Some others texting in. Isn't that blackmail? In today's atmosphere of corrupt politics, I can understand why someone would want to record their conversations with someone else. If you don't have your own back, who can you expect to have it for you? Yes, there is that aspect of it. But what about the other side of this? I mean, I do think one of the hanging, lingering, problematic cloud-like questions out there is, who else did she record? Who else does she have recordings on? DJT? Think about that. What could she use that for? What benefit could she have there? And if she used it against Trump and released a recording that he thought was private, would you be cheering her on? Yes, she did the right thing. Corrupt politics. She should record him. If she released some damning audio of Donald Trump, how do you think he'd respond? What do you think what would you say if you're a Trump supporter? Yes, Kari Lake, you did. And someone said it's Carrie, whatever. Lake, yes, Lake, you did the right thing. I don't think you would. I think you'd be PO'd. And you'd be like, that's not fair. That's dirty. But here, when we like Carrie Lake more than the other person, and he represents sort of the establishment, I guess, even though he was the COO and CFO for Trump's prior campaigns. All right. So this isn't a guy who isn't a Trump guy. What do you do? 303-696-1971, blah, blah, blah. Oh, nice text from Brett. Oh, this is so funny. He's hitting me up on the Lincoln Club. I got to get to that, Brett. I've got to figure out a way to get back to you and shoot you my own phone number. Here's another. If Trump took Nikki Haley to lunch at Mar-a-Lago before she announced her run against him and said, listen, Nikki, you have no chance to win against me now, but in 2 years, I can support you for a 2028 run. In the meantime, I will give you a job at the cart girl on my Doral golf course. Doral. Doral. And better yet, the coveted weekend shift. George, are you saying that would be illegal? I don't know what the law would be in Florida governing that, and I need to nail down the specifics of it here, but I don't think you can bribe someone or pay someone to not run for office in the state. I'd really have to look into that a little bit more, but I don't know if that would be criminal. But what if she released that audio? Would you cheer her on? Would you say, yes, Nikki, thank you. Thank you for getting Trump being recorded, trying to bribe you out of running against him? Or would you say, dang, Nikki, sell out? How could you betray Trump like that? Because we don't say any of that stuff about this guy, Jeff DeWitt, who engaged in bad behavior, maybe criminal behavior. I don't know. It's just fascinating to me, the different approaches. Some are principled. Many are political and ideological. And in this case, it's cult of personality, if that's a word. We love Trump. So anything bad that happens to Trump, the other person's to blame. Well, apply that to this situation here. After all, wasn't she previously an investigative journalist? Yes, she was. And my guess is when she was interviewing someone as an investigative journalist, they knew she was an investigative journalist and she would do stuff like that. But as a politician, as a friend, as a coworker, or even employee, I'm not sure what that situation was, in her living room, are you presuming that you're being recorded? I don't think so. You're a great American patriot when you want to be. This is our friend Eric. And have you heard about the truckers' convoy? I think you mean convoy coming to the Texas border on the 20th. I haven't heard about that. So much going on with the border. We're going to have to cover some of that again tomorrow. Look, let's do this. Let me tell you about one other super opportunity you have to improve your life, especially and frankly, probably only if you're a dude. And that right there is to our friends at the Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic. I've talked with guys about this. They might whisper to each other about the low testosterone stuff, but there's a great deal of apprehension, I think, from men, certainly in our generation, who worry that, hey, is this somehow a reflection on who I am or my identity or my manhood? It's none of those things. Bodies just go through changes. Some people have a drop off in this and an increase in that. Some people get cancer. Some people don't. Some people live forever. Some people die early. But a lot of dudes out there are dealing with low testosterone after a certain period of time in their lives. So what? You can either just live with it, the poor sleep, the I don't have that joie de vivre anymore, that spring in my step, that desire to go work out, the desire to hook up with my sweetie. Doesn't matter, right? You can just let that go. Or you can call Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic. Get a scheduled appointment out there at 720-440-7900, 720-440-7900. And maybe have that opportunity to change your life. And I'm telling you, the guys I talked with about this, just about a week ago now, maybe it was this last weekend. I'm telling you, he told me a story of a buddy of his, a coworker of his. And he said, it's the best thing he's ever done in his life for himself. That's what he says. Best thing I've ever done for myself. And then he showed me pictures of this guy, 60 years old or something, working out. Dude's buff, man. And it's not because of steroids. It's just because he has that motivation, that enthusiasm again to go out there and tackle the world. Take the 10-question true-false quiz. You can't fail it. You just find your for it. Go to RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com, RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com, and see if you're eligible. Have the conversation. It's a $99 super cheap medical consult that they roll the cost of that into the treatment. And then you can thank me later. That's RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. When we come back, I'll finish up with your texts. We've got David and some others on the line. We'll get to them in just a second. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Paul in Castle Rock, you're on 710. What do you think?
Well, I
hey, Paul.
Record all. Hello?
Yep, you're here.
Hello? Hey,
yep,
I
you're
record
here, buddy.
all. I'm sorry. I just want to say I record all my phone calls. And I've been doing it for years.
All your phone calls. What about your in-person conversations?
Some of those. It depends on the person. Yeah. If I'm dealing with a salesman, it's recorded.
Do you tell them?
Hell no.
Why not?
As long as I know, that it's the one person rule. As long as one person knows what's going on. But it has saved me.
Really? How so?
I did a lot of background investigations when I was in law enforcement, and people would be rejected because of domestic violence or drunk on the job with another agency, and they would call up and raise hell with the internal affairs people saying why, and they tell them, hey, here's your problem.
Yeah. Hey, my man. Hey, thank you for the call. I'm so sorry, buddy, but we've got 20 seconds left. I appreciate it, Paul. Sorry, Dave, we couldn't get to you. We'll try again tomorrow. Hey, fantastic conversation, text, calls. You can listen to them in the podcast. Let's keep this thing going tomorrow. I love it. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.